tale about an orange-faced buffoon who should be in a jail. When people say he's done something that goes beyond the pale, he will shake his head and give this answer without fail. A hoax, he says it's all a hoax. When at a press conference or with misspelled keystrokes, he says he tells no lies and that he never jokes. Confronting with the truth, he'll say it's all a hoax. A modern Don Quixote, he hates the windmills, claiming to protect the birds and whales he says they kill. But don't believe that story, it's really just a shill. He just did not want to see them wild golfing on Scottish hills. A hoax, he said it's all a hoax. When at a press conference or with misspelled keystrokes, changing a storm path with black marker strokes. Confronted with the truth, to say it's all a hoax. Casting mail-in ballots is something that he's done. Now he wants to ban them for each and every one. He claims it's for integrity in each election, but he won't believe the results unless it's him that's won. A hoax, he says it's all a hoax. When at a press conference or with misspelled keystrokes, they'll fool you with distractions like real sugar in Cokes. Confronted with the truth, you'll say it's all a hoax. He promised to release all the Epstein files that caused all the MAGA base to react with smiles. But how long has he put it off? It sure has been a while, and now he's calling this a hoax, protecting pedophiles. A hoax, he says it's all a hoax. When at a press conference or with misspelled keystrokes, he'll keep on gaslighting up until he croaks. Confronted with the truth, he'll say it's all a hoax.
Trump piled debt, trillions tall. Promised Mexico would fund that wall. Praised dictators, said they're strong. Had Joe done it, they'd say he's wrong. Had Biden done it, MAGA would flip. Had Biden done it, whole numbers would slip. Had Biden done it, they'd scream foul play. But Trump did it, so it must be okay. Goes through crises, storms, and war. Called soldiers losers who died in war. Hire his kids to run DC. If it was Hunter, they'd scream treachery. Had Biden done it, MAGA would flip. Had Biden done it, the numbers would slip. Had Biden done it, Fox News would say our day. But Trump did it, so it must be okay. Love Kim Jong-un, he wrote love letters that take the guns first, lose those rights forever. Signed you spending bills with glee. Had Joe done that, it'd be tyranny. Had Biden done it, MAGA would flip. Had Biden done it, whole numbers would slip. Had Biden done it, they shall look today. But Trump did it, so it must be okay. Kept secret files, countless untold. Said Putin's word was good as gold. Invited the Taliban to come to U.S. soil. If Joe had done that, they'd all recoil. Had Biden done it, MAGA would flip. Had Biden done it, whole numbers would slip. Had Biden done it, they'd want him to pay. But Trump did it, so it must be okay. Double standards loud and clear. Rules for Trump, but not for peers. What they call treason, if Joe's the name, is patriotism when Donald's to blame. Had Biden done it, MAGA would
This just in. A sudden spike in logic levels across the city. Citizens report seeing a man with glasses and a podcast mic. We go now live to Liberal Dan.
Yo, who you gonna call when Nazi writings on the wall? Call your man Liberal Dan, cause you know we got a plan. The right wing talking shit, but he ain't about to quit. He'll take his proton pack and zap your logic cause it's whack. So who you gonna call when the writing's on the wall? Call your man Liberal Dan, and the rhetoric will fall.
It's being reported that Liberal Dan is setting up what appears to be some sort of straw man containment field.
He's calling out your lies with his mic, he'll vaporize. Cross the streams in your dreams, bitch, you know that he's too wise. You're like Slimer talking crap, but you walked into his trap. Yo, it's more than entertainment, it's misinformation contained. So who you gonna call when the writing's on the wall? Call your man Liberal Dan, and the rhetoric will fall. The Statue of Liberty, the writing you can't see. So bring the huddled masses, it's a war of the classes. While Trump may think he's Vigo, Dan can cut through that ego. He's got the facts to prove him wrong, got that logic like Egon. Your logic is a ghost, cause you know this chick is toast. When you follow MTG, it's conspiracy, you'll see. There's no need to taser, he's got wit like Occam's razor. Liberal Dan cuts those lies with his Jewish-based laser.
It's unbelievable. Liberal Dan just used the literal dog whistle to lure a large group of internet trolls into what is being called a self-collapsing rhetoric singularity. In all my years of reporting, I've never seen anything like this.
So don't call to be a heckler, you ain't no Judge Rexler. He'll bust you like Scolary, cause your logic's looking hairy. Right-wing callers think they're cool, but they sounding just like Zool. You the dog, he the man, and yo, his name is Liberal Dan. So who you gonna call when the writing's on the wall? Call your man Liberal Dan, and the rhetoric will fall. Liberal Dan, Liberal Dan, Liberal Dan.
Claimed king, a groper in chief, stealing our country, a crooked orange thief. Faux patriots who are poorly educated, wearing red hats and also unvaccinated. Liberal Dan will see us through. It's the best show that you're not listening to. So when you hear the call, animals unite. Liberal Dan Radio, talk from the left, that's right. A failing media that's barely treading water. They're too inept to fight this new world order. Corporate pigs are at the trough, hear the squeals. The swine won't bite the hands that feeds them meals. But Liberal Dan will see us flow. It's the best show that you're not listening to. So when you hear the call, animals unite. Liberal Dan Radio, talk from the left, that's right. A leftist voice on air, exposing MAGA treason, breaking through their lies with facts, logic, and reason. Unmasking hypocrisy, the truth will be our guide. Call out their lies, justice is on our side. Cause Liberal Dan will see us through. It's the best show that you're not listening to. So when you hear the call, animals unite. Liberal Dan Radio, talk from the left, that's right. Liberal Dan Radio, talk from the left, that's right.
And welcome back to Liberal Dan Radio, Talk from the Left. That's right. This is your host, Dan Zimmerman, coming at you live from New Orleans, Louisiana. We may open up the phone lines a little bit for the chat. We did start the show a little early because I noticed Hal was ending a little early, so I figured why not give Hal the opportunity to raid? And, well, Hal Sparks is raiding over on the Twitch thread, so thank you all, Sparklers, for joining us over there. I'm not seeing a raid going on YouTube, but, you know, it is what it is. It happens. Oh, wait, that's Donald's line.
It is what it is.
Thank you, Donald. Anyway, so we did want to, you know, basically let you go seamlessly from one show to the other, so that's why we gave it a few minutes early head start. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining. If you haven't liked the video currently on YouTube, make sure to like, share, hit that subscribe button. Even if you're on Twitch, head on over to YouTube and hit the like, share, and subscribe as well. Help the algorithm, because as we all say, Al Gore needs more rhythm. So sorry for the to my mods, Aaron and Jolie, for the little bit of an early start, just, you know, without any warning. But I figured y'all would figure it out eventually or whatever. So anyway, so Aaron might not be here yet. I don't know. Maybe there's too much snow. I'm not sure. Al Gore needs more rhythm, says a choice at every game, but not more altitude. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, shouts out to everybody in both the chats. There's tons of people right now, so I'm not going to go through everyone, but I do appreciate everybody for joining. Although Orville be regular, hello. I trusted every game, hello. And I think Ali Osher is a watch streak and a 5-stream streak, so thank you very much for watching. But yes, I do know the reference. Yes. And shouts out to everybody on the YouTube chat as well. There's some hilarious news with all of the doldrum and dreariness and the dystopian nightmare that is the Donald Trump administration going on. But before we talk about all of that stuff, we do need to talk about two very vital pieces of information with the news. One of which, first of all, before we talk about the two pieces of news, Alyosha goes, who can I share the Facebook screenshot about the FG and S Star Trek TOS character with one side of face black? Email liberaldanradio@gmail.com if you want to share anything with the show. So there you go. Have church certificate. I'm not saying it's good news, but it's interesting news, and, you know, a little opportunity to have humor. Apparently, there was a hospital evacuation. I believe it was in France. What is going on with this thing? First of all, before we do that, I don't know why the chat's not showing up. That is very, very weird. I don't know why the chat's not showing up, because Botrix showed up. I don't know why the chat's not showing up. Is it not showing up here either? I don't know why the chat's not showing up. So until it pops back up, we'll just go ahead and pop on over here in the middle until the chat decides to start working. Botrix seems to be working okay, but for some reason the chat is not. So for some reason we're not seeing the chat get displayed up here. So sorry, y'all. You normally get to see your text up there. I don't know why that's happening. Anyway, so rolling back to the start of the topic that we were going to discuss. In France, an unexploded 8-inch long World War I artillery shell was found up the anus of a 24-year-old. Now, and this caused the hospital to have to be evacuated. You know, they evacuated the hospital not for fire, but not for gas, but for colonial artillery, with the emphasis on the colon. Doctor said it's not a foreign object, that's foreign policy. The man didn't have a medical emergency, he had a military appointment. The chart didn't say rectal obstruction, it said a rectal ordinance, and I would say rectum, it damn near killed him. The bomb squad showed up and said, "Sir, why is the battlefield you?" Doctors said, "Don't clench," like it was the Cuban Missile Crisis. He didn't come in unstable. He came in classified. I don't know about, talk about, you know, coming or whatever.
Oh, my.
France hasn't evacuated a building that fast since someone insulted cheese. Most 24-year-olds experiment with antiques by buying vinyl. This is why museums say do not touch. Somewhere a World War I general just got a chill and doesn't know why. Typically, if a 24-year-old wanted to have an old military relic explode inside him, he would have to buy a veteran some dinner first. And I've heard of explosive diarrhea, but this is ridiculous. That's mutually assured destruction with the emphasis on ass. So that's news bit number one. It's been a long time since I've actually done Liberal Dan Radio headlines, where we usually do a snarky look at the news of the day, and I hadn't really had much funny things to make jokes about, but there's not just one, we've got two, not just number two, like, you know, Mr. Frenchy guy over there experimenting with an 8-inch ordinance. At least it wasn't 10, huh? I wonder what you use for lube on that, right? The other thing that I found interesting that was announced over the weekend was that Israel is having, for the first time ever, a bobsled team. And there are people, typically when Jewish people, talk about synagogue, the places of worship, it's called synagogues or shuls. So people are calling this shul runnings. I can't take credit for that joke, but shul runnings is what they're calling it. Again, it's historic, not just for the fact that, Israeli Olympic team is actually sending a bobsled team to the Olympics, but it's the first time that 4 Jews agreed to sit in the same vehicle and let gravity make decisions for them. Other teams typically will psych themselves up by yelling faster. The Israeli team goes, careful. At the top of the track, total silence, not nerves. Everyone's waiting for somebody to say, no, are we doing this? The coach said, trust the sled. Half the team says, we don't trust anything that doesn't have brakes. Other teams visualize gold. The Israeli team visualizes explaining this to their mothers. If they win or lose, it does not matter. They survived, they are cold, and they just want some matzo ball soup. And nothing says Olympic glory like risking your life at 80 miles an hour and then ending the run asking, okay, but is it worth it? Anyway, so that's little Jewish humor from your Jewish podcaster, Liberal Dan, here with Liberal Dan Radio, talk from the left. That's right. So there we go. 2 bits of amusing news that I actually, there's actually another bit of amusing news as well, which is the fact that ice is also going to be at the Olympics. Not just the fact that it's cold and there's going to be snow and ice, typically what you see at the Winter Olympics, but literal immigration, customs, and enforcement, for some reason, is going to be going to the Winter Olympics to help provide security for some reason. What are they going to do? Try and detain athletes from other countries for not being U.S. citizens? Are they going to be shocked when they go to the Olympics and find out that there's no Somali athletes anywhere because the Somalians have not entered anybody into any Winter Olympics whatsoever, including this one? And will ICE shoot their own biathlon competitors, i.e. the U.S. Olympic team biathlon competitors, for carrying loaded rifles? Got to prevent a supposed massacre, right? I mean, I would be very concerned if I was involved in any part of the American Olympic delegation, if you had to have a rifle or some other sort of weaponry, and I wouldn't get anywhere near ICE because they're trigger happy and they're going to shoot them instead of, allowing the Olympians to shoot their targets. So I don't know what the hell is up with the idea of why ICE has any business. ICE enforcement is supposed to happen, on the border with people who are literally here in violation of our border policies, not murdering U.S. citizens, not detaining and deporting people who are here legally, and not providing security to the Olympics. And we already know that these people have inadequate training, right? We know that their training is inadequate. So why then would we want to put them in a situation where you have lots of people who are not American when you know these people are trigger-happy motherfuckers, right? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Let's see, before we get into the things, we also have the email. Let's see. We have this email. That's not what I wanted to do. Let's go ahead and see. I miss this says, I miss the old times. when Star Trek wasn't so political and preachy. Racial hate destroyed an entire society. The oppressed class was framed by the elite class as inherently violent, even though it's the conditions making them behave like that. The pro-life, anti-contraception planet that is overpopulated living hell, and careless environmental exploitation causing the extinction of an endangered species. So, yes, Star Trek has never been political except for when it is. And unfortunately, conservatives don't quite understand that. Instead, they complain over the fact that, oh no, we have women and interspecies marriage and dating going on in the new series, which is actually excellent, by the way. I am really enjoying Starfleet Academy. I think it's very well done. But, you know, what do I know? I'm a woke leftist, right? So therefore, I can't possibly have a valid opinion on the woke TV series that has been Star Trek from its inception. So... and exactly right, said Rob over on Twitch. And Rage Against the Machine was never political. Like, I mean, these are the people who just never listened to this song. I mean, they never realized that they were saying some of those who work forces are the same that burn crosses. It never crossed their minds that it was basically saying that you have a bunch of law enforcement who are Klansmen. You have a bunch of racist people working law enforcement. It never dawned on them that they just wanted to yell out at the top of the lungs, "Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me." Which pretty much explains how the conservatives acted during the start of COVID as well, right? Except now, when the government tells them to do something, it's, oh, we must comply, because now it's, you know, Trump's in charge. So therefore, they're basically telling Trump, please fuck me, I will do whatever it is that you tell us to do. That's what they will tell the government now, because Herr Trump is in charge. So... yeah, woke means don't be an asshole. Woke just basically means that, hey, we are awake. We are awake and we're understanding what's going on in this country. We're understanding what's going on. We have awakened ourselves and we're seeing what's going on and how it's bad. And somehow that's a terrible thing to the racists. Well, obviously the racists don't like it, because once you've awakened yourself to the racism that exists in our society, you then want to fix it. And there's nothing a racist hates more than people realizing that the racists are being racist, right? So, Easy E Network, Trump sucks more than a Huber vacuum. Maybe not as much as other things, but, you know, I don't know. Although apparently, was it Bill Clinton? Trump does suck him too, apparently, according to some of the files, right? And of course, before we get to some of the other topics at hand, of course, we have to go over the topic of, like, I'm wavering. I'm not going to do it today, regardless of whether or not I actually do it on Wednesday or Thursday or not. I am wavering on reading some of the excerpts from the leaked the released and then unreleased sections of the Epstein files that have Trump's name all over them. Because the problem is that if I start reading from that, you know, people are going to say, oh, well, no, here's some horrible information that you're sharing, and YouTube and TikTok and anything else, all these other social media channels that, you know, have, you know, their panties in a wad, because you can't discuss topics of, you know, importance, like the fact that we have a pedophile president who's protecting other pedophiles. God forbid you actually tell people the truth about what's going on. Otherwise, you might get flagged. Oh no, you're violating some sort of policies. Because again, especially now that TikTok is owned now by a Trump ally, they're clearly not going to want to have information out there showing that Trump has involved himself in these acts of pedophilia, right? But, you know, and you have all these people who are, you know, talked about Pizzagate. It was Pizzagate. You had this cabal of people. The QAnon folks were talking about this cabal that was trying to go after. You had Jim Caviezel when he was out there talking about his movie about the Sound of Freedom. In discussing the movie, he was talking about how this cabal of people were harvesting adacronome or whatever it is from the children that they kill or whatever, because, you know, he couldn't just make a movie about trafficking. He had to inject some anti-Semitic bullshit into it as well. But now you have evidence right now showing clearly that there has been involvement with Donald Trump, with all these other people. And look, if Clinton and whatever, all these other people were involved as well, again, throw them under the prison as well. Just bury them under the prison, build a new prison over on top of it. We don't care, because we're on the left. We are on the left. We are not a cult like MAGA is. But now that it's Trump being revealed to have done all these things, they make excuses, they ignore it, they whatever. But I guarantee you, if it was only Donald Trump that was not in that list, and if it was like Biden and Obama and Clinton and other people on the left who were in those files and not Trump, they'd be marching down the streets with their tiki torches, shouting their racist, anti-Semitic slogans or whatever, and blaming, Jews and everyone else for doing these horrible things. But, if it was Biden,
Had Biden done it, MAGA would flip. Had Biden done it, whole numbers would flip. Had Biden done it, that scream foul play. But Trump did it, so it must be okay.
and then he goes, didn't Jack Posobiec promote the Pizzagate conspiracy too? Yes, and pizza, like going out for pizza or whatever, was basically used throughout these files as a code word to basically say, Epstein's bringing the pizza. I haven't gone too much into depth into all the different code words that were going on as it pertained to, what all that means. But I did see the plenty of examples. Oh, he's bringing the pizza. So therefore, we gotta, celebrate that. That's how we're going to party with the pizza. Now, I'm wondering if they use like toppings or whatever to determine whether or not what type of pizza was going to be at the party to determine who should be invited to said parties and who shouldn't be invited to said parties or whatever. Jolie goes, I'm so sick of the insane amount of hypocrisy. It's infuriating. Well, I mean, hypocrisy is a conservative prerequisite, so we should be used to it at this point. But still, it's mind-numbingly just frustrating to deal with these idiots. Let's see. They all seem to know the buzzwords. Exactly. Well, just like, let's talk about the Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals. Like, I had never heard of Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals until I heard conservatives talking about it. And conservatives are very knowledgeable about Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals. They can cite them, they can quote them, they can tell you all day long about all of Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals. Now, I mean, it's possible that there might have been a college course where maybe Obama talked about it once or whatever. I don't know. But the real experts on these rules for radicals are the Trumpians, are the MAGA folks, are the conservatives who want to try and say that it's the liberals who are using this. But in reality, every time I see a conservative quoting one of these rules for supposed radicals, it's something that I see conservatives doing way more times than I see leftists doing. So they are, again, every conservative accusation is a confession. So when they start telling us that we are using the Alinsky's rules for radicals, it really means that they're admitting to using these rules, and they're just trying to blame us for what they are doing. So yes, they also quote Marx all the time. They are very, for people who are as poorly educated as they are, because Donald Trump did say that he loved the poorly educated, and that's because he gets lots of votes on them. Donald Trump also tells you that, smart people don't like him, again, because we're smart and we understand why he is such a danger to this planet, to the society, to this country, to freedom and liberty and justice for all. We understand that. But they will sit there, and for as uneducated and ill-informed as they are, they can spout off those rules because they're trained seals. They're trained seals, they're dancing monkeys, whatever type of animal you want to claim that they are. And they're lemmings too, because they will march right off the cliff following Donald Trump as the Pied Piper. So they will absolutely jump off the cliff for him as well. But I mean, they will just go in and they will just focus in on certain things, and they'll be able to, spit off, oh, you mentioned this. Well, here's Alinsky's rules for radicals. Boom, 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 boom. Oh, here's this other thing that I know about. Let's say voter ID. You mentioned voter ID. When I do things, again, if you haven't watched the show regularly, I will play this game with conservatives where I will basically say, that my issue with these so-called voter ID laws are not the requirement to show the ID, despite the fact that it's clear that a voter ID requirement is not going to reduce any amount of voter fraud whatsoever, at least not any significant amount, because people are not going to see the benefit of taking the risk of casting an illegal ballot, because the reward of having one additional vote being put into the system is not worth the risk of spending however many days, weeks, months, or years in jail you might have to spend for doing that illegal act. So no one's doing that. But my problem with these so-called voter ID laws are the other things that they try and shoehorn in there, things that have nothing to do with the requirement to show a voter ID. Things like, changing when you can early vote. Things like adding on a cost to get the ID, making it a de facto poll tax, which is unconstitutional because our Constitution prohibits government requiring you to spend money in order to be able to cast a ballot. So there are all these other things in these so-called voter ID laws that are clearly problematic and have nothing to do with showing the requirement to vote. And I will even predict, I will say in text, despite the fact that I said that my issue with these so-called voter ID laws are not the requirement to show an ID, but these other conditions, these other provisions in these laws that have nothing to do with showing a voter ID, that there's going to be some idiot who comes in response that says, well, what's wrong with showing an ID? Or, well, you need an ID to do this, that, whatever. Or they'll focus their argument on IDs. And even though I said my problem isn't the ID, it's all the other crap. Because they have blinders on. And as soon as they hear the term voter ID, they start spitting out what they're trained to spit out because they hear it, so they know they have to say it because they have to be good little foot soldiers for the Third Reich. And, well, then I laugh at them because I say, you just did exactly what I predicted. It's a very fun game. It's the Liberal Dan home game. You could play the Liberal Dan radio home game at home just by doing those simple steps. A, watch somebody talking about so-called voter ID laws. Call them so-called voter ID laws and say that your problem with these laws are not the requirement to show an ID, but the other parts of the laws that have nothing to do with an ID requirement. And then say, despite this, someone is still going to respond to you and say, oh, well, what's wrong with showing an ID? Or some other crap like that. And then you get to laugh in their faces. It's very fun. I highly recommend trying it. And it's free. You don't even have to pay to play the Liberal Dan radio home game at home. You could do it anywhere you want. And it doesn't cost you $1. Now, if you get enjoyment out of it and you appreciate the fact that I've now shared the rules of the Liberal Dan radio home game, or at least one of the parts of the Liberal Dan radio home game, you could, Venmo Liberal Dan Radio. You could buy me a cider. Go to liberaldan.com and click the Buy Me a Cider button, which for some reason also isn't showing up here either. I don't know what's going on with that. This is very weird. Yeah, for some reason it's not showing up, and I don't know why. Anyway, yes, the Voting Rights Act made any form of voter suppression illegal, says Easy Network. Of course, the Republicans are actively trying to dismantle the Voting Rights Act. Sections 4, Sections 3 have already been nuked or whatever. Fansan 9005, a voter ID law would require national standards and be completely free for everyone. Republicans would hate having to have some sort of national ID themselves. It's always for everyone else. Exactly. And that's what I've said. I've said, look, why don't we do... I've done that as well. That's like the next level. That's the advanced version of the Liberal Dan Radio home game. When you call into like a conservative talk show and say, hey, let's do what Mexico does. Mexico gives everybody a voter ID. It gives everybody a ID that they get. It gives it to them for free. And it's a single standard across the board, and everybody has it, and everybody uses that to vote. And they'll be like hemming and hawing, like, whoa, we can't do that. That's socialism. Well, don't you want everybody to have an ID? Here's our compromise. Because they don't want it to actually be something that they solve. Like most issues that conservatives bring up, they really don't actually want a solution to the problem that they're claiming exists, even if because usually there's not even a problem. But they don't actually want a solution to the problem. They want to keep running on the problem and using that problem to fund their other bigoted activities. Like, non-citizens are voting because we don't have voter IDs, so now let's go deport a bunch of non-citizens, even if they're here legally. even though there's no evidence that they've done so. So, hey, Big Hook, good to see you in the chat over on YouTube. Let's see, to be humble, to be honest, I mean, I wouldn't even call it a right-wing talk show. It's like playing chess with a pigeon. The bird knocks over the pieces, shits on the board, and struts around like a one. Well, the reason I listen and call in, A, it's practice when I debate the conservatives on the show, and B, it's show prep. I get to hear what the conservatives are talking about, and as such, I can be like, hey, you know, here's another topic for Liberal Dan Radio for today's show. So let's see. What other parts of the news are coming up that is mind-numbingly stupid by the Trump administration. The Trump administration is investigating a middle school over its cheerleading team. The U.S. Department of Education has opened up a Title IX investigation into a Maine school district for allegedly allowing a transgender student to participate in a co-ed cheerleading program. Let me read that again in case everybody missed it. The U.S. Department of Education has opened a Title IX investigation into a Maine school district for allegedly allowing a transgender student to participate in a co-ed cheerleading program. Officials with the DOE's Office of Civil Rights announced 18 new investigations last week targeting 16 school districts and 2 lower-level boards of education across 10 Democratic-held states. Of course, not in anything that the Republicans held because they can't do anything there, right? As Maine Public noted, a DOE press release collectively accused the entities of violating Title IX anti-discrimination law by allowing trans students to join school sports leagues that correspond with their gender, but did not detail specific allegations. But this is a co-ed cheerleading program. So if you are a boy, if you are a girl, if you are non-binary, you could all take part in this co-ed cheerleading program because it's co-ed. So we all know that MAGA folks like to misgender trans folk. So to a MAGA person, somebody who is a trans woman, a young trans woman, is still, in their eyes, a boy. And somebody who is a young trans man, in their eyes, is a girl. Now, of course, we in Liberal Radio talk from left, that's right, respect somebody for who they are and what they tell. The best person to tell us who they are is the individual themselves, because not every time it's right. And trans folks are the gender which they are and not the gender that got put on their birth certificate. But this is a co-ed cheerleading program, and as such, gender is irrelevant because all genders are allowed to participate. But this administration is so fucking stupid that they don't even understand that. Or maybe some of them actually even do understand it, but rely on the fact that their voters are so poorly educated that they don't, that they'll be like, oh, well, they're trying to put trans people into this co-ed thing. Gender is irrelevant if it's co-ed, you dumb motherfuckers. This is the idiocy that we're dealing with, and the hatred and the hatefulness that we're dealing with in this, under this administration. Because they will just do things because it's hateful and because it owns the trans folks, and you're wicked and evil towards trans people. When in reality, there's no issue here because it's co-ed. Church the different game. Imagine if Biden had done that.
Had Biden done it, MAGA would flip. Had Biden done it, whole numbers would flip. Had Biden done it, that scream foul play. But Trump did it, so it must be okay.
Fantan over on Twitch says, if I had a girl on my middle school football team and she gave her hits just as much as he took him. And there are examples of, like, young, high school, young women, high school age young women who, are the size of a linebacker or the size of a line person or something. And guess what? They play really well, and they can take the hits and they can give the hits, and they're allowed to play because it's typically not seen as being, unfair by allowing, women, young women to participate in the men's sports if they can compete with the men. But they're just afraid of the other way around. Oh, the boys are not going to, boys are making it unfair for the young girls. And I have a whole rant, and I have a whole fat man rant on that. I'm not going to go into that whole rant today. I could if I wanted to, but I have a lot of stuff to talk about. But if you go to liberaldanradio.com, which is the YouTube channel, youtube.com/liberaldanradio, if you go to there, you go to the Fat Man Rant playlist, and you find the one on, cherry-picking fairness as it pertains to young trans people in sports, you will see that argument. You will find that argument. If you find it compelling, share it to your social media channels, because that's one of the best ways to help Liberal Dan Radio, is to share content that you like on the channels to your social media, to expose other people to Liberal Dan Radio. Talk from the left, that's right? But there's examples, though, of you had a young trans man, i.e. somebody who was assigned female at birth, a young trans man who was trying to wrestle. And this young man wanted to wrestle in the young men's division. And Texas's law said, nope, you can't, sorry, because your birth certificate says that you're female, and as such, you need to wrestle the young women. And so he was kicking their ass. Like, absolutely kicking their ass. But he didn't want to kick the ass of the young women. He wanted to be wrestling with the young men, like he is, because he's a young trans man. That makes him a young man. And Texas wouldn't allow him to wrestle. But now, if this was actually somebody who wasn't saying that they were a young trans man, if this was actually just a young woman who wanted to participate on the men's side, they probably would have allowed it. Because the issue here is not the fact that it's someone who was assigned female at birth trying to participate in the men's wrestling league. It was the fact that they wanted to use the power of the state to discriminate and be hateful against trans folk. That's what they care about. That's their goals, right? So that's what they do. Let's see. Although I have share a story. I just watched True Crime. An older woman, 100 pounds heavier than her attacker, fought the dude off with her heft. No joke. She almost killed him in a chokehold. Well, who doesn't want to see that, right? Anybody who's assaulting somebody, should absolutely get owned by their victims. That's great. Kicked his ass. She survived and kicked his ass. Love to see it. Edgewalker69 says, presuming there is an argument behind the hate, what is the steel man of it? I'm not exactly quite sure what you mean by that. Can you please expound on that, about what you mean by the steel man of it? Wait, hold on. Atrocious at every game. Wait. Boo. Hold on. I'm trying to figure out what you're responding to. Atrocious at every game goes, whoa, it's almost like the POTUS is a pedophile. Oh, wait. I was scrolling back a little bit. They're asking, what is the best faith interpretation of their argument? What is the best faith interpretation of the argument about if it's really hate? Presuming there is an argument by the hate, what is the best faith argument of that? I don't think there is a good faith argument. I really don't. Like, you claim that you want to protect young women, but in reality, how many young women are really being harmed because young trans women are being allowed to participate in these sports? You're gonna make me read this, aren't you? All right, let's go ahead. We're gonna go ahead and read it anyway, because I basically need to just, let's see, trans blah blah blah, or let me just, I think there's an easier way for me to search cherry pick. There we go. Church of the Game goes, I don't believe there is. Right said Rob, I'm not sure if theirs is a good faith argument. It isn't. So you don't know. I do know what the arguments are, Edgewalker69. I'm about to get, in order to deal with your question, I now have to read this on the screen. So here we go. There is no evidence that trans athletes have any real advantage over their cis counterparts. However, if a young trans woman who is an athlete would have any advantage competing at a high school level against cisgender athletes, the odds that your cis daughter is going to miss out on some sort of scholarship opportunity or some other way be harmed by this individual is slim to none. Young boys are not going to want, one of the arguments is that boys are going to want to pretend to be women just to get ahead. Young boys are not going to want to pretend to be women just to get ahead. Toxic masculinity and transphobia makes it hard enough for trans women to come out of the closet as young trans women. Do you think that a young cis man who is not trans is going to want to deal with all of that hate that they're going to have to deal with simply to, go play on a basketball team? This isn't Joanna Man. This isn't the movies. This isn't some guy trying to, who couldn't make it and who couldn't cut it in, men's basketball, and as such, you're going to be a women's basketball star. No, that's not what's going to happen here. And also, young men and young women don't have the same, chemistry growing up. It's not equal across the line. There's no set number of hormones. And when I wrote this initially, I said, are we then going to weed out cis women with high testosterone levels because it's unfair to others too? And I posited that, and in reality, that's now what some of these committees are doing. Some of these committees are now absolutely weeding out people who are not only assigned female at birth, but continue to identify as women at birth, and tell them that they can't compete in the Olympics because their testosterone levels are too high because it's unfair to others. So they're going to continuously try and weed out people who they don't want participating to make it easier for their young women to participate. And we could manufacture any number of things that might give some folks an unfair advantage in, for example, getting sports scholarships. Parents who might have the time and or money to be able to get their kids, special trainers to be able to train them for the sports. Is that unfair to the kids whose parents can't afford to get trainers or who can't have the time to take to help their kids train? What about children with health issues that predispose them to being overweight? People with hypothyroidism, people with unnaturally high blood pressure, people with other conditions, other issues that make it more difficult for them to lose weight, make it more difficult for them to compete in athletics, whether or not, maybe people who don't have full use of their limbs. Is it fair that they can't compete if they don't yet qualify for whatever might need to be, in the Special Olympics? So to me, it seems that we're cherry picking what fairness is. Furthermore, in an article that caused me to have to write this thing, there is a young woman who finished 8th place and as such missed an event by 2 spots. But 5 other cis women finished better than she did. So what is her excuse for not beating those 5 other cis women? Clearly those other cis women had what it took to, finish in whatever top spots were needed for them to get into the finals or the state championships or whatever it was at the time. So maybe the issue here is that people shouldn't have to rely on athletics to further their education or to succeed in life. Now, if there are people who are athletically gifted and are able to participate in these things and are able to get sports scholarships or whatever and be able to go to some of these big name schools and do really well and be able to get their education that way, fine. But maybe that shouldn't, maybe we should be making sure that people don't have to sit here and say, if I can't get a sports scholarship, I'm not going to be able to get a college education and I'm not going to be able to do better in life. Maybe we need to improve that situation to make sure that people don't have to rely on sports to be able to make it into college if a college degree is needed for whatever career they want to have in the future. And the most important thing here is that studies have shown that for every person who accepts a young trans person for who they are instead of for what's on their birth certificate, that person is 50% less likely to commit suicide. So if you have one person, somebody, whatever odds are that this person who is a young trans person might commit suicide, and look, we also need to do a better job of, helping people with their mental health to make sure that they're less suicidal altogether for whatever reasons they might be suicidal for. But so if one person, simply one person, accepts somebody who is a young trans person for who they are instead of what's on their birth certificate, that person is now 50% less likely to off themselves. And if there's 2, then that person is 75% less likely to commit suicide. And if it's 3, it's 87.5% less likely, and so on and so on and so forth. So the more people who are supportive of this young trans person, the more people who supports this person, the more people who enables them to feel comfortable in their own body as who they are instead of, what they were assigned at birth, then that person is going to be less likely to off themselves. And I think protecting young kids from suicide is much more important than determining, trying to figure out, oh, well, this policy is unfair because little Sally may not be able to get a sports scholarship in the high school to get into college or whatever. Let's make sure that young Sally can get into college regardless of sporting ability. Right? So, let's see. Tank Fuller, I agree with the suicide rate. Men do commit suicide more than anyone. Well, but the fact that, again, that's also because of patriarchal issues, Tank Fuller, 83. Thank you for joining the show. But yes, the suicide rate of men tends to be higher than women because we have a patriarchal society that shunts men into more riskier roles and tells women that they can't do those roles just because they're women. If we were to eliminate patriarchal roles in the society and stop enforcing toxic standards on masculinity that the society loves to uphold, then maybe young men and older men as well would be far less likely to commit suicide. And if we also improved mental health in this country, we would also see a definite market gain in being able to reduce the number of suicides that take place every year, right? So Edgewalker, isn't the overall suicide rate of trans people like 40%? So 50% less likely to be 20%. But again, so if you go to that 40% number, so you're 50%, so that makes it 20, and then another 50% would make it 20, another 50% would make it 10, would make it 10%, another 50% would make it 5%, another 50% would make it 2.5%. Lather, rinse, repeat. So that's the point that's being made. So yeah, you might have some sort of law of diminishing return that goes on over there, right? Because for each person you're getting fewer and fewer chances. But again, for every person that accepts the person, you're still making the person less likely to want to off themselves. And as such, that should be the goal, making it safer for all children, be it they trans, be it they cis, right? Butthole Surfers Pepper, and they're doing it in Texas. Yeah, exactly. I don't mind the sun sometimes, hear me, does it show? I can taste you on my lips and smell you in my clothes. Anyway, another Mikey took a knife while arguing in traffic. Flipper died a natural death. He died and caught a nasty virus. Then there was the ever-present football player rapist. They were all in love with dying. They were doing it in Texas. Anyway, so let's see. I think you need to read that script again. We have someone in the chat who can benefit from hearing it. I'm going to read it again. So, see, boys are men that suck in sports with other boys and men. They become women. No, that's not... Clearly. Did you jump in at the... Again, yeah, I guess you're right to trust it every game. Did you jump in late at the point? Again, young boys are not going to want to pretend to be women just to get ahead. There is no evidence that you have actual cis boys, young cis men who are out there pretending to be women because they want to make it in sports. That's not what's going on. And if you think that's what's going on, you need to re-educate yourself. So, right, said Rob, universal healthcare. Universal healthcare would help, but unfortunately, we do also need, when we have universal healthcare, we need to have a situation where we embrace and accept the fact that mental health care should be included as being a vital part of universal health care. Unfortunately, too many people don't want to have health care or a mental health care be included in healthcare overall. So, Tank Fuller, 83, the only way to help with mental health issues is money needs to go to help instead of giving money. It's not either or. Like, if somebody is here in violation of our border policies and they need mental health, and, providing them with some mental health care to help them out would actually be a good thing to do. Because when you have better mental health care in a country, it benefits not just the person receiving the better mental health care, it benefits the people around them. which is why we don't want to, have stupid rules that basically tell hospitals that they can't get reimbursed if they give treatment to emergency treatment to somebody who might be undocumented, because you don't want to have somebody to force them to show their ID to prove that they're citizens in order to make sure that they can get emergency care. Everybody should be able to get emergency care, be that emergency care is physical health and or be it mental health. So let me guess, what statistics are you talking about? The statistics about young trans youth? Here's the thing. I have no reason to believe that young boys are trying to pretend to be young girls when they're young cis boys. I have no reason to believe that young cis boys are pretending to be girls just to get ahead in sports. You're making that argument. The onus is on you to prove that your argument is correct. I don't have a requirement to disprove your argument. You're required in a debate. If you make an assertion, you have the requirement. The onus is on you to present that as truth, to present your argument as truth, and then I can work on rebutting it once you give evidence to support your claim. And look, if you believe that you have evidence to support your claim, I more than welcome you to send me an email at liberaldanradio@gmail.com. I more than welcome that email. And you can send me what data you think you have, and then I'll address that data on a future show after I do some research and to see whether or not the data that you're showing is valid or not, and as such, whatever. But if you're making the assertion that young cis boys are pretending to be girls to get ahead in sports, you need to prove that. It's not my job to disprove that. And until you prove it, I have no reason to believe it's true. Just because you say it? No, I understand. I understand how a lot of times conservatives will believe something that somebody says because if Trump says it, it's automatically magically true. Like, for example, the idea that we've magically had 0 illegal border crossings since March. I mean, that's what this administration has told us, right? We've had 0 illegal border crossings since March. And dumbasses like Axios, like the Moran interview, just basically parroted that crap. It's, oh, you've done such a good job on the border. Why do you believe that? The responsibility is on the administration to prove that there's 0 illegal border crossings since March. But because Border Patrol and ICE are operating in Minneapolis, they're operating in Norfolk, Virginia, they're operating in San Francisco, they're operating in New Orleans, they're operating in all these blue areas across the country and not really focusing on the border, it follows the whole Donald Trump thing that, Donald Trump believed if you didn't have testing, you don't have cases because he believed that testing causes cases, I guess, or whatever, because he's a fucking moron. But Donald Trump has this thing where he doesn't have object permanence. He doesn't understand how, just because if you don't see something, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But again, Trump lacks object permanence because he has borderline personality disorder, and that's something that adults with borderline personality disorder have to deal with.
If Trump can't see it, you must not exist. That also includes the Epstein list. Object permanence, a milestone missed. If Trump can't see it, he must not exist.
Edgewalker69 says, I've seen it. Asmund Goldstream, literally a guy pretending to be a girl and smashing the girls like straight out of South Park. Like with the Macho Man, whatever, with Macho Man, dressing up as a girl or whatever, the South Park thing. And you sure that it wasn't a real thing and not something staged to try and prove a point? Again, if you want to send me that video, send it to liberaldanradio@gmail.com. I'd be more than happy to look at it and see if it was, a real example of something that's actually happening, or if just another BS lie piece of propaganda made up by the anti-trans folk to spread hatred against trans people altogether. So, let's see. Trans ain't a gender. Nobody said trans is a gender. Why are you saying, Tank Fuller, that trans is a gender? Nobody is saying that trans is a gender. Transgender is the opposite of cisgender. Means that you're the gender that you were born and is written on your birth certificate. Transgender mean you differ from what is on your birth certificate. It doesn't mean that trans is a gender. It means that the gender that you are differs from the gender that was put on your birth certificate. Now, some people who are non-binary consider themselves to be trans as well because they're marked as, being either male or female on their birth certificate, but they don't identify as either. Therefore, they're non-binary. Therefore, many non-binary folks consider themselves to be trans. But I mean, I would recommend, Tank Fuller, that you go investigate and go look up and research what trans really means, because if you're saying that trans is or isn't a gender, no, trans isn't a gender, but you're already operating on a assumption of what trans means, and it's a false one. So therefore, you're going to then, if you're operating from false definitions of what words mean, then you're not going to come to a correct result as to what the end results of those words wind up doing in our society, right? And no, it's not a new way of being gay. Trans is not a new way of being gay, because gender and sexual orientation are two different things. You can be a young trans man and still be into men, and you're still a young trans gay man at that point. Or you could be a young trans woman and be into women, and therefore you're a young trans woman who also happens to be a lesbian. And yes, there are absolutely cis women who are tomboys, and that's fine. But I've seen a lot of bigoted social media accounts trying to make the thing that they're trying to get rid of tomboys, and instead of trying to get rid of tomboys, they should protect tomboys who are just women who like to be more sporty and have short hair and wear flannel or whatever. That's not what trans is. So again, you're operating off another false assumption of what trans means. It's not orientation, it's gender. It's whether or not your gender matches that's what's on your birth certificate or not. And this has been the Liberal Dan Radio TED Talk. Democrats love making up stupid words, cis, non-binary, pansexual. I mean, there is some arguments between, in some areas of the LGBTQA world where some people who are pan don't like the term bi, some people who are bi who don't like the term pan. In reality, I also identify as somebody who is pansexual. That's my orientation. It's not because, it's because I don't care what's on your birth certificate if I'm attracted to you. Now, does this mean that I have ever dated anybody who's a cis man? No, I have not. I tend to be attracted to folks who tend to be on the more feminine side, but again, I've talked about this at the end of the last show, and I guess I'll do it again now. There was somebody that I dated during high school, and not high school, somebody I dated during college, and this individual, it was more of a non-committed, more physical type of relationship, and at the time, this individual had not outed himself as a young trans man, or as a trans man, I guess at that point. That individual was not out of the closet yet, and as such, I had no idea. But later on in life, I found out, before he unfortunately passed away, that he was a young trans male. He did come out of the closet as a young trans man, and had he come out of the closet prior to us no longer seeing each other, guess what? I would have still continued to date him. Why? Because my attraction to him had no basis on him being, in the closet or out of the closet or what was on his birth certificate. My attraction to him was because I was attracted to him. Simple as that. So, pansexual people need to be hit with a pan. Yeah, we don't advocate or condone violence here on Liberal Dan Radio Talk from left to right, especially as it pertains to what your sexual orientation might be. So, yes, and people have the right to define themselves, right, said Robin. They should be able to have the right to define themselves. And I'm sorry, YouTube chat, that I'm avoiding y'all over there, but I have more things to, to confront over that I'm actually seeing. Maybe I should pan over to the chat. So, I should pan over to the chat to see if there's anything going on in the YouTube. Oh, the LOL means a joke, calm down. Yeah, Schrodinger's joke. I was just joking depending on how people react to it. That's often a conservative idea of joking is. Let's go ahead and, Steve says, Steve from across the pond.
If it's no Scottish, it's crap.
Said, we only played basketball once in high school. I was amazing. Got the ball, dribbled down the pitch. Wait, you call it a basketball? You call it pitch? I mean, I understand it's a soccer pitch. I'm sorry, a football pitch. But y'all call it a basketball pitch? That's my problem right there. It's weird to call it a pitch. I got the ball, dribbled down the pitch, leapt, scored right in the basket, easy. It was my own team's basket, and I was a bit confused. It happens. Or
It is what it is.
thank you, Donald. Laney, those are the things that make some of these athletes so special because they have natural abilities they didn't get via synthetic means. Gifted athletes have advantages, but they're natural. Yeah. Jeff goes, I could dunk on a women's basketball. I should have gotten a wig. Haha. Let's see. And then look, there was somebody who I was in middle school with, and one of the people, actually one of the young women when I was in middle school, I had a giant crush on. But we would play basketball against each other. We would play, one-on-one in practicing or whatever, and we were just about the same talent level. She was, I mean, I wasn't great. I was okay. She was good, and we would play basketball with each other, and it was a pretty even match. And so why wouldn't I be able to play a sport with her simply because our genders didn't match, right? So, let's see. Scroll down on the YouTube thread for a bit. Steve, I've been through that. My stats BS. Show me your stats. Don't say anything and show me. Well, yeah, exactly. DPD, people should ask themselves, why are you so enraged when poor people or undocumented people receive help but are okay with corporations or billionaires receive corporate welfare? I mean, there are some people who are on the right who will also have a problem with that, but typically those people are labeled under the umbrella of libertarian, and those people tend to be against the actions of ICE. They tend to not like Trump, yada, yada, yada. So the libertarians are actually spitting some truth nowadays recently, and it's been interesting to see how much the left and the libertarians are coming together to agree on how horrible this Trump administration is. Steve, when I moved to Edinburgh, a pal for years took me aside and told me, look, you might see me there. 4 of us go to Edinburgh and drag for nights out. Cool with me, buddy. I'll buy you a pint. Nice. Oh, fuck knows what you call it, a court. Yes, it's a basketball court, not a basketball pitch. I'm just picking on you, Steve.
If it's no Scottish, it's crap.
Anyway, a field is called a pitch. Their word for field is paddock. Let's see. I scored the winning basket in a donkey what is a donkey basketball game? Are you talking about like horse or what? See, Jolie over on Twitch goes, I've always known MAGA are ignorant, but I'm still always surprised by just how ignorant they truly are when I encountered one in the wild. Tank Fuller goes, go cry more, Democrat. I bet y'all probably come... What? No. We would not murder you like Charlie Kirk got murdered or like Arena was murdered as well. Y'all will kill anyone who don't believe in rainbows and unicorns shoot out of your butt when you fart. First of all, I'm currently not a registered Democrat. I am a registered no party because I was going to, before all this other crap started happening in my life, I was going to actually start trying to run for office here in Louisiana, running for one of my local congressional district. And I wanted to do so by trying to gather signatures to show how mind-numbingly stupid the Republican Party made the rules here in Louisiana. We've discussed this on a previous show, just a brief 30,000-foot overview. In Louisiana, the Louisiana Republican Party that runs the state basically says if you're running for office as a Democrat or Republican, you can have ballot access by either getting petitions signed or by paying money. But if you're a third party, you are not allowed to have ballot access simply by paying money. You have to use a collection of signatures to do so. And if you're running for office and trying to collect signatures and you're running as a third party, you may not collect the signatures of Democrats or Republicans or people who are registered that way, because that way those signatures will not count. Those people have to unregister as Democrats or Republicans if they want to sign your petition, which just goes to show that the Republican Party doesn't give a rat's ass about equal treatment under the law or anything else for that matter. But I was going to be participating in that, and my friend Frankie Hires, who is running for the Louisiana Senate, has collected signatures and is starting to try that process to see about making sure, seeing about getting ballot access and potentially suing the state for creating a law that creates unequal ballot access based on what your political ideology is. So, and I haven't changed back yet, so I'm still technically no party, so F off on your whole old Democrats. Right Said Rob said, you're not telling hard truths, you're doing random scapegoating. You've listed a bunch of horrific crimes and waved your hand and blamed an entire political party and marginalized group because it feels good to have a villain and requires less thought. Yeah, But also, yeah, fuck Charlie Kirk, because I'm not going to sit here and celebrate that Charlie Kirk died, but I'm not going to sit here and mourn it either, because he was a horrible individual who talked about horrible racist shit and posted horrible racist shit. Although one of the funniest things post-death was some comedian posted that as soon as J.D. Vance found out that Erica Kirk became the chair of Talking Points USA, J.D. Vance is like, whoa, 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 whoa. You had me at chair. Control 3232. Why don't Democrats defend Biden's accomplishments more? We do all the time. CHIPS Act was a great piece of legislation that he got signed. We'll defend lots of people's accomplishments on the left. But right now, it's Donald Trump that's president. So Biden has, nothing to do with the horrible actions that Trump is doing. Now, had Biden done the things that Trump is doing currently, like if Biden trying to sue the Internal Revenue Service for billions of dollars, they would freak out. But Trump's doing it, so it's magically okay.
Had Biden done it, MAGA would flip. Had Biden done it, whole numbers would flip. Had Biden done it, the screen fell play. But Trump did it, so it must be okay.
So Trump's lawsuit against the IRS is even more outrageous than it seems. Now, here's my initial thoughts. Was that Trump is basically suing the IRS for what? For billions of dollars because of it made him look bad. Some investigation made him look bad. Boo-hoo. And it caused irreparable harm. It caused so much irreparable harm that he was able to win re-election in 2024. Right? That's how much he was harmed by the IRS, right? But if Trump is suing the IRS, that means that he is suing an organization that he is in charge of. So does he now get to magically say, and I haven't even read this article yet, but does he now get to magically say that he's going to settle with himself, and as such, basically say, okay, well, we're going to settle the lawsuit with the IRS, and we'll take only $1 billion instead of the multiple billions of dollars. Again, had Biden tried to grift billions of dollars from the federal government, y'all would be shitting bricks. But Trump is doing it, so y'all are magically okay with it, right?
Had Biden done it, MAGA would flip. Had Biden done it, whole numbers would flip. Had Biden done it, the screen fell play. But Trump did it, so it must be okay.
A church certificate game. I think Dan is trying to beat me to the had Biden done it stuff. I mean, it's difficult because you do set me up with it a lot of the times. But yes, I do try and come up with it by myself without trying to look like a trained monkey. See, last week, Donald Trump filed suit against the IRS demanding $10 billion in compensation for unauthorized disclosure of his taxes in September of 2020, when he was also president. So Donald Trump was president when they supposedly disclosed his taxes in an unauthorized way, and now he's suing the IRS for what his IRS did back when he was president during the first term. Oftentimes, a news story will see outrageous at first glance, but on closer inspection, it will become less outrageous, or perhaps not outrageous at all. On such occasions, it is the duty of sober journal of opinions, to set the record straight. This website, this is not such occasion. Rather, this is a story that the more you dig into the details, the more outrageous it becomes. News coverage has actually failed to capture how very fully stupid this lawsuit is. I have now reviewed the relevant documents and can attest that even for Trump, this lawsuit is an outlier. It's batshit crazy. Has the President of the United States ever sued the executive branch over which he presides? He has not. Wait, didn't Trump previously sue the Justice Department over the FBI's Russiagate investigation? Trump wasn't sitting president then, and that wasn't a lawsuit, but rather two administrative claims filed within the Justice Department. Administrative claim bypasses the courts to seek settlement under threat of filing a lawsuit. The Russiagate claim was filed in 2023, and the Mar-a-Lago claim was filed in 2024. You can read a copy of the letter, and they give a link in the article. Administrative claims were unresolved after Trump began his second term, and as recently as October, the New York Times reported they remain so, and that Trump was demanding the Justice Department pay him $230 million. In one respect, the administrative claims were even more kleptocratic than the IRS lawsuit. The decision about whether to settle and for how much resides entirely with Trump's own Justice Department. It looks bad. Trump admitted in October, I'm suing myself, right? So I don't know. But that was a lawsuit that was very strong, very strong, very powerful. It's possible that Trump is suing the IRS for $10 billion to make his demand for $230 million settlement seem reasonable. Okay, so Trump just became the first sitting president to sue the executive branch, but he's suing over something that happened not recently, but years ago. Who was president when Trump's taxes were disclosed? Exactly what I said, Donald Trump. Donald Trump's taxes were downloaded and then made public during Trump's first term. This is a president not only suing his own executive branch, but suing it over something that happened while he was running it. Do we know who stole the tax records? Yes, it was an enterprising IRS contract employee named Charles Chaz Littlejohn, whose surname, yes, is how the merry men addressed Robin Hood, second in command. Littlejohn downloaded Trump's information in October 2018 and gave it to the New York Times in May 2019. The Times then used the material in September 27, 2020 story, long concealed records show Trump's chronic losses and years of tax avoidance. Littlejohn, also downloaded tax filings by thousands of rich people and gave those to ProPublica, which, starting in June 2021, after Trump was president, published a series of stories. Where's Littlejohn today? Between now and 2029, you'll find him at the Federal Correctional Institution in Marion, Illinois. Although Littlejohn's removal of the tax filing went undetected for 3 years, after the Times piece was published, the IRS tracked Littlejohn down and prosecuted him for unauthorized disclosure of tax information. Littlejohn entered a guilty plea and is now serving a 5-year sentence. Is 5 years a lot? Sure is. Federal sentencing guidelines recommend 10 months, and the judge had followed these. Littlejohn would have gotten out last March, but the prosecution asked for 5 years to make an example, and the judge, a Biden appointee, assented. Do people who cheat on their taxes get 5 years? Not even close. More than a third who are prosecuted get no prison time, and among those who do, the average sentence is 16 months. Of course, every case is different. Blah, blah, blah. Trump's lawsuit says the IRS's fault that Littlejohn downloaded the files. How did Littlejohn do it? He explained it in a video deposition in March 2024. Lawsuit that hedge fund billionaire Ken Griffin brought against the IRS because he was mad that his tax returns ended up in ProPublica. So Trump was the president when Littlejohn downloaded the taxes and gave them to the New York Times. Still, how was Trump supposed to know that there was vulnerabilities? Because while he was president, the IRS Inspector General told him so, that there were vulnerabilities. In support of the argument that the IRS is culpable, a Trump complaint says, every year from 2010 through 2020, the Treasury Inspector General for the Tax Administration, TIGTA, warned the IRS about security deficiencies related to the protection of taxpayers' confidential tax return information. Many of these deficiencies went uncorrected and allowed Littlejohn to misappropriate the information, upload it to a private website, and then disclose it. But for 4 of those years, Trump was president. If the IRS was negligent in not responding sufficiently to these Inspector General warnings, then Trump's White House was negligent too. As Harry Truman said, the buck stops here. And the reports were not available for the Oval Office, but for the general public. It's weird that Trump lawyers think mentioning the IRS Inspector General helps Trump's case when it clearly does the opposite. So Griffin's lawsuit was the dry run for Trump. So what happened? Blah, blah, blah. The case was more or less thrown out of court. Griffin filed his lawsuit in 2022 and reached a puny settlement with the IRS in 2024. In the settlement, Griffin received no money. The IRS apologized. It was a complete waste of Griffin's time and lawyers' fees. I can't resist voicing my disappointment that the IRS apology didn't say the following. We are sorry that there was an unauthorized disclosure that showed Ken Griffin paid a scandalously low average effective income rate of 29.2% when Griffin was the 4th highest paid human in the United States. The apology just said IRS failed to prevent Mr. Littlejohn's criminal conduct, and it was working hard to prevent such disclosures in the future. Why did Griffin settle? Because the judge tossed out Griffin's claim that the IRS violated the 1974 Privacy Act on the ground that Griffin, whose net worth was $51 billion, couldn't show that he suffered pecuniary harm. Trump's lawsuit similarly claims the IRS violated the Privacy Act, but since the Times published its tax data, Trump's net worth has more than tripled to $6.5 billion. That should make it very difficult for the Trump administration to show that harm. Joint employed, blah, 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 blah. Bingo, Trump's expansive definition of joint employment in his IRS lawsuit flatly contradicts his own administration policy, which is to narrow the definition to maximally benefit big business. Yada, yada, yada. If Trump actually pried $10 billion from the IRS, would it be the biggest civil judgment in history? Just about. So here you go, conservatives, especially those conservatives who are listening over on Twitch. But if you're listening on YouTube as well, I would love to hear it as well. Why is this okay? Why is it okay that Donald Trump is suing himself and will be able to potentially have his own Department of Justice settle this himself? Donald Trump literally can basically tell the Department of Justice to go ahead and make a settlement for this lawsuit. Maybe he says, okay, I'll settle for the paltry sum of $2 billion. I won't take $10 billion, I'll take $2 billion. And then he'll be able to take your tax dollars and put it into his bank account because his administration was inadequately protecting the taxpayer data of himself and other people. So his administration was at fault. It happened under his watch, and now he's going to sue the government because of the fault of his own administration to protect the data, and now he's going to try and grift to get more. This is why I'm calling it the Trumpian Grift, as the show is titled here, the Farce and the Furious Trumpian Grift. Human being as a alpha mega. Let's scroll back. A Democrat can walk down a sidewalk with 1,000 Republicans. All they do is call you names a couple of times, and you'll get through. A Republican walks on the sidewalk and 1,000 Democrats. They will be assaulted, spit on, called names, and murdered. Hell, when Jake Lang was in the middle of, was it Minneapolis or whatever? Or I mean, he did get punched in the face by somebody when he was in Dearborn. But there was a leftist activist who escorted Jake Lang out of the area and protected him for his safety. Of course, Jake Lang assaulted cops and got pardoned for it. Y'all, you have a whole bunch of Republicans. Your claim that Republicans are supposedly so peaceful is full of shit because the Republicans, the conservative, the MAGA folks who protested on January 6th went on to the Capitol and assaulted cops. And y'all supposedly think that blue lives matter, but blue lives don't matter to y'all, or blue lives only matter to y'all. There's no such thing as a blue life. You choose to be a cop. It's not something that you're born as. You choose to be or not be a cop. That's your choice that you make. But, you know, y'all only say blue lives matter when blue lives are taking black lives. When blue lives, or maybe now in this case, when blue lives are taking black lives, or they're taking the lives of people on the left. When blue lives are being assaulted by MAGA folks who are whining and bitching and moaning and complaining over the false claims of a stolen election that Trump still can't get over, y'all make excuses. Like, Jake Lang did much more to the police officer on January 6th than at all, comparatively. I mean, the Alex Preddy did nothing to the police officer. He had his hand up. When the police officer was pushing him, he was taking steps back. He didn't do anything to harm police officers, and yet he got murdered. But yet, Jake Lang can assault a cop, can steal this cop's riot shield and assault a cop with it, can swing a baseball bat, allegedly, at the cops or whatever, can post a video online and with an arrow say, hey, this is me in the interaction with this bat and with this shield, and y'all will make excuses for him. Y'all will say, oh, Renee Good should have complied, even though she did comply. One of the agents told her to get out of there, and she was trying to get out of there slowly and turning the wheel away from anybody, but yet she was still shot in the face 3 times. This one of the final 2 shots is what killed her. The first shot didn't kill her, but she was shot 3 times and murdered by a trigger-happy cop. But, you know, y'all say, oh, she should have complied, but Ashley Babbitt didn't comply. She crossed over barricades through locked doors that had been locked, through a broken window of another locked door that was protecting the people on the other side of it, i.e. the people who were trying to do the business of the government and trying to count the votes for the Electoral College in a purely symbolic action that, you know, even frickin' Dan Quayle understood that it was ridiculous to suggest that Mike Pence had any authority to do anything to overturn the results of the election. And y'all, oh, she was murdered by that cop. Yeah, she was a domestic terrorist in front of a whole bunch of people shouting that they should hang the vice president because the vice president wasn't doing the bidding of the president of these United States at the time, over a fake claim that Donald Trump lost or really won the election when he really lost the election. Donald Trump was too busy throwing ketchup against the wall to actually, send help to, prevent his own followers from, committing, crimes against this country. But, y'all make excuses as to why it was, murder for Ashley Babbitt to get killed, but you justify the murder of Alex Preddy and Renee Nicole Good because you're a bunch of hypocrites. January 6th, Trump tried to get more security. He wanted to bring in the National Guard troops to protect his people. He specifically said that he wanted the National Guard there to protect his riders. He might not have used the word riders, but he wanted the National Guard to protect the people there at the Capitol. He didn't want the National Guard there to protect the Capitol. He wanted the people to be able to do what they wanted to do at the Capitol and have the National Guard backing them. But as soon as Donald Trump saw that there was an attack going on against the Capitol, that people were using violence and force to break down barricades, that people were using violence and force to smash a cop's head in a door, that there was a tunnel full of cops that were trying to prevent these idiots, these morons, these treasonous terrorists from, crossing into that tunnel, and they were pushing against these cops. Trump did anything there? No. He just sat back and threw his ketchup at the wall, ate his hamburgers, and then eventually came out and said, please stop now. Hours later, after the harm was already done. So no, you're not going to get away with spouting those lies here on Liberal Dan Radio, Talk from the Left. That's right. Exactly, Christine. Renee Good was giving conflicting orders as well. Babbitt wasn't. And again, what order could they have given? ICE had no authority, as I've said on the show before. ICE had zero authority to enforce traffic laws. What Renee Good was doing at the time was a traffic infraction. Local law enforcement should have been responsible for citing her with a ticket for obstructing traffic. If ICE felt that she was deserving of a ticket, they could have said, hey, local law enforcement, can you come here and get her to move this vehicle out of the way? Because her actions, by sitting in the vehicle, were not preventing ICE from doing anything that they were wanting to do that day. The murderer of Renee Good passed around her vehicle on the right side of the road, i.e. to the back of her vehicle, and then other cars went around the front of the vehicle, i.e. on the left side of the road. So there was plenty of room to pass that. But you had Kristi Noem, the dog murderer, the Twatsy in chief, who basically was like, she was weaponizing her vehicle. No, she wasn't. No, she wasn't. And then, of course, you had bovine excrement saying that Alex Preddy was there to massacre cops when there was no evidence that that was the case whatsoever. But again, he was trying to build a case that he was going to do that to justify his murder at the hands of two people in law enforcement, of federal law enforcement. And y'all will sit here and comply. Well, you know what? The January 6th motherfucker should have complied. January 6th motherfucker should have absolutely listened to what the cop said, not crossed over barricades that were blocked. And what about the police that let the people through the barricades? I guarantee you that's what was said in here, but I haven't seen it yet. We'll look at that in a second. What about the cops that let them through the barricades? Well, if a cop lets me into your house, it doesn't give me the authority to break up shit in your house. Cops cannot give me the authority to violate the law. Any cop that opened a barricade to allow these rioters to go in were just aiding and abetting the treason that was going on and should have been fired and should have been brought up on charges as well. But then again, Trump pardoned all the people, all of them, even the ones that attacked the cops. Look, I wouldn't have given a rat's ass if Trump would have decided that he was going to pardon people who were just there, who didn't do any physical harm to anybody or anything, who didn't steal, who didn't break anything. If you just walked through the door that was already open, not breaking through a broken window of a locked door, but if you walked through a door that had already been open and you were walking around the Capitol and all you did was that, you didn't threaten cops, you just kind of stood around. If you sat down in somebody's office or you sat down in the halls of the Senate or whatever and didn't take anything or didn't do anything that was, outwardly harmful, I mean, I would argue that maybe you were guilty of something, but I wouldn't have cried about those people getting pardoned or those people having their charges dropped, like they did with Jake Lang, because Jake Lang hadn't been convicted yet because he purposely put off the case until Trump became president. And the right wing doesn't want to talk about that shit. But we will here on Liberal Dan Radio, talk from life that's right. Let's see. Scroll. It wasn't even him that actually meant anything. So let's see. What the hell is going on downstairs? Edge Walker 69. Do you even know why you hate rich people? Do I know why I hate rich people? I mean, we don't like the fact that people are billionaires while people are starving. No, there's no such thing as an ethical billionaire, especially while people are living, in poverty, while people are homeless, why people, I still can't quite for the life of me figure out why Donald Trump wants to stop large corporations from purchasing single-family homes. I haven't quite yet figured that out as to what the deal is there. I mean, yes, that might, put some negative pressure on the housing market, making it more affordable if we're going to take him at face value. But the last time I tried to take Trump at face value during this term was when he claimed that he was going to be paying out a patriot dividend to people who are serving in the military, basically giving him $1,776. And I was like, oh, we're going to give him a patriot dividend based off of the tariffs. And I was like, I'm not going to argue with it. But then like a day later, it came out that those funds were already appropriated, and they were appropriated as a housing subsidy for $2,000. So instead of giving them $2,000 of a housing subsidy that's not taxable, they made it a patriot dividend, which is a bonus that is taxable, and as such gave them less money, and now they have to pay taxes on it. So no, Donald Trump doesn't get credit for that bullshit either. So let's see. Edge Walker said, turns out he is a bit of a monster, the Democrats' own making. What, who? Musk? Let's see. I'm trying to test your claim of the census. Obviously, males and females are different and have different capacities because of the bone density, muscle mass, and distribution. Okay, but again, men and women, men don't all have the same bone density and muscle mass or whatever. Women don't have the same bone density and muscle mass or whatever. And once you start taking, estrogen, like hormone therapy, you start, if you're a trans woman and you start taking the estrogen therapy to be able to, have more feminine features, you are going to lose some of that bone mass. You're going to lose some of that muscle density. You're going to lose some of those things that came naturally to you as you were, being rose with testosterone. That's one of the reasons why people want to be able to give puberty blockers to their young trans kids when, after talking to doctors and psychologists and having a conversation that's making the best decisions made for their kids, to be able to say, hey, let's hold off on letting puberty take place, so that if they are really and truly somebody who is not matching the gender that they were assigned at birth, then guess what? Then they're not going to have those development issues, and it's going to be easier for them to transition once they become an adult. And if they do decide to change their mind, they could get off the puberty blockers, and puberty can then start happening, and normally, whatever, yada, yada, yada. So, but why do you have such a problem for, you want to tell other people's, other kids' parents how they can raise their kids? If we told y'all how to raise your kids, you shit bricks. We tell y'all what to do. Trump wants to tell everybody how to raise their kids, and you're like, no problem with it, but had Biden done it,
Had Biden done it, MAGA would flip. Had Biden done it, whole numbers would flip. Had Biden done it, they'd scream foul play. But Trump did it, so it must be okay.
there's no such thing as a trans kid. That's called child abuse, bro. No, because again, trans kids don't start transitioning until, like, you can't, like, here's the lie. Here's the lie that conservatives will say. Oh, it's this a big epidemic of all of these young kids getting bottom surgery, all these young kids getting mastectomy. I know a young woman who got a mastectomy or at least had a breast reduction, when she was in high school. Why? Because it was needed for her health. And she was born a woman. She was born, assigned female at birth. She was, still a woman today. We're still friends. But she was having so much back pain that they had to do top surgery on her to reduce the size of her chest. But y'all will be like, well, we can't do that because that's gender affirming surgery. Gender affirming, procedures. I've had there was a debate that I had on Nick Driver's channel, one of the a more moderate type of conservative person, and it was me and 3 conservatives having a debate. And one of the conservative idiots that I was debating, he basically was like saying that kids should not be allowed to do this. I'm like, well, they're typically not allowed to do these things. There are some clinics that will provide young children, with surgery on their parts when there are developmental problems that require them to fix their parts in order for them to be able to operate properly, and those clinics are vital and necessary and needed. And helping a young boy fix his parts is gender affirming surgery to make sure that his parts work correctly. And gender affirming doesn't necessarily mean trans surgery, it just means affirming that of their particular gender. Viagra is another example where old white men get to use gender affirming care all the time because they want their parts to work properly. But hey, and you said I was behind. Well, yes, I am behind because I'm sitting here talking and having to deal with all the rants that were going on. Not even talking about some of the stuff that I want to talk about in the show because I'm having to deal with I'm letting y'all drive the show, so to speak, right? Because this is what we do on Liberal Dan Radio, Talk from the Left. That's right. We engage with people on the other side of the aisle and make sure that they can have make sure that we can have a good debate. Now, sometimes it devolves into not so much of a good debate, but that really depends on y'all now, does it? Human F being, I want 2 more arms so I can be twice as alpha. Jolie, I'm not here to moderate the host. Wait, I missed that somebody wants Jolie to moderate me? And Edgewalker, no, I did not say that Charlie Kirk deserved it. I just said he was a piece of shit human being. Just because you're a piece of shit human being, it doesn't mean you deserve to get murdered. If you heard that, I never once said that Charlie Kirk deserved to be killed. But hey, you can keep living on your Earth 2 planet where things that never happened actually do. But I never once said that Charlie Kirk deserved to be. I just said I wasn't mourning it. I didn't celebrate. I said I wasn't going to celebrate it, but I said I wasn't going to mourn it either. Me choosing to not mourn Charlie Kirk's murder doesn't mean that it was any less wrong to murder him. I don't think he should have been murdered. Of course, he believes that gun deaths are a necessary requirement to have the Second Amendment, and as such, and he also believed that nobody should have empathy because empathy is harmful. So if I were to show Charlie Kirk any empathy, or his widow any empathy, I would be going against what Charlie Kirk would want, right? Or am I supposed to have empathy despite the fact that Charlie Kirk said we shouldn't have it? Hey, it's Aaron! Good to see you, Aaron. Thank you for joining. You're missing a lively show. We have a bunch of conservatives over on the Twitch channel, at least, after the House Sparks raid. So we've only dropped down to 14 viewers, whatever. So... Big Hook, Aaron is here. Everyone be on their best behavior now. Wait, I'm supposed to be I've never behaved well, regardless of who's here. I'm always at bad behavior, aren't I? Yeah, just like Biden, you are getting blamed for what you did not say. Yes, but if Trump got blamed for what he didn't say, they would have a fit. But
Had Biden done it, MAGA would flip. Had Biden done it, whole numbers would flip. Had Biden done it, that scream foul play. But Trump did it, so it must be okay.
so what does Edgewalker say again? I'm aware. Let's compare the average male versus the average female, and let's compare the elite of each sex. Which do you think the results are? But again, that's still not the point. you missed the entire point of my whole trans athletes rant, which I'm not going to repeat again. If you want to go see what I actually say about the trans athletes, you can go to YouTube channel, either liberaldanradio.com or youtube.com/liberaldanradio. You can find the Fat Man rant section, and in the Fat Man rant section, you can see me discussing. There's two rants, actually. There's one rant where I give this whole trans athlete rant, and then there's another rant where I cite the trans athlete rant because of the fact that they actually started doing something that I accurately predicted, because that's what I do here on Liberal Dan Radio, Talk from Left, that's right. I accurately predict things that will happen under conservatism. That's what I do. That's what I do! Like, as Obama said when he nailed the 3 at the basketball court, right? See, Bike Shop Guru, Edgewalker 69, sex determining Y protein, a mammalian protein found in Homo sapiens, sex determining region, Y protein, or testes determining factor is a DNA bonding protein encoded in the SRY gene that is responsible for the initiation of male sex determination in theory in mammals. SRY is an intronless sex determining gene in the Y chromosome. Mutations in this gene lead to a range of disorders of sex development with varying effects on each individual growth. Exactly. And that's why I say that you can't just look at sex as a binary. Because it's not. The only reason I don't point to these articles anymore is because they're behind paywalls at the Scientific American. But you can go to the Scientific American website. You can find many different articles where they will explain to you why the simple gender binary is antiquated, and not just the gender binary is antiquated, but so is the idea of two sexes is antiquated. There are, of all of the combinations of chromosomes that you have. That could happen. It's not just XX and XY. You have X0, you have XX, you have XY, you have XXY, you have XXXY, you have XXXY, you have XXXX, you have XXX. You have a whole bunch of different. There's at least 6 known combinations of sex chromosomes that can happen. Plus, there's the whether or not you have the SRY gene or not. Plus, there's other hormonal factors that come into play that will determine how you develop as a human being. There's no set number of or amount of testosterone or estrogen that one can have when you're developing as a person. So as such, the more male and female are more like 2 points on a graph. And, you know, where people locate, it's kind of like one of those splatter graphs or whatever, where, like, you know, maybe you have some that are right between the middle, and those people might be non-binary folks. Then you might have some way up here that's like agender, and some way down here that might also be agender. But you have people who, like, might be hyper-masculine. You might have people who are hyper-feminine. You might have, you know, but all of the different ways that people, you know, develop, you know, kind of usually center around people who are generally consider themselves to be male and people who generally consider themselves to be female. But then there's all the other people who don't fall into either of those categories, and science will tell you that these are antiquated ideas. You know, if you subscribe to kindergarten cop biology, i.e. all boys have a penis and all girls have a vagina, then I understand that, you know, that's where you stop learning in kindergarten cop biology. But once you move past that and get into more advanced science, which the poorly educated Donald Trump says he loves, are never going to understand, you will then see that the whole kindergarten cop biology is flawed. It's overly simplistic. Kind of like how Newtonian physics is overly simplistic. Now, for everyday work, for Newtonian physics, you know, y equals, you know, no, that's the slope of a line, not the whatever. But, you know, force equals mass times acceleration. The movement of celestial bodies typically follow, you know, Newtonian physics. But there's some things like a perihelion shift in the planet of Mercury's orbit around the sun that was not accounted for by Newtonian physics, and as such, Einstein had to come up with his general relativity, and then he had to come up with special relativity as well to deal with other stuff. And even Einsteinian physics, general relativity, easy for me to say, that falls apart on the quantum level, i.e. the very small. So is Newtonian physics wrong? No, it works for every day-to-day things, but it's still overly simplistic, and it doesn't give you an accurate representation of the entirety of the motion of how celestial bodies move on the very large scale type things, and also doesn't deal with the issues of, you know, once you start moving fast enough and, you know, E equals mc squared, and as you start, you know, getting faster and faster, you know, time slows down, mass gets larger, yada, 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 lather, rinse, repeat. It's still, Newtonian physics doesn't deal with that sort of thing, but it's provable that while Newtonian physics can be good for your, high school science class, when you're getting into more advanced levels of science, it doesn't work for the very large bodies and very fast accelerations, etc. And it also doesn't work for the very small in the quantum realm. So not like talking about MCU quantum realm type thing, but actual in dealing with quantum mechanics. Einstein's rules go right out the window there, and that's why Einstein spent a lot of his time trying to develop a theory of everything. And that's why a lot of people work on things like string theory to try and solve the answers to the equations of why things work in a way that's a unified theory of everything, which we still haven't come up with yet because we're not there yet. We're working towards it, but we're not there yet. But we do know is that the more overly simplistic explanations of the apple falling on your head from a tree, and therefore that's why gravity works. That's overly simplistic, just as it is overly simplistic to say all boys have a penis and all girls have a vagina. So maybe I'm being a little bit overconfident in my ability to explain that. Maybe I'm being a little overconfident in your ability to understand that. But, that's basically why you shouldn't just, trust kindergarten biology, because it's more complicated than that. Life is often more complicated than the typical binaries that conservatives want to put us in. Things aren't always yes or no, true or false. There are parts to this existence that reject those simplistic things. Usually life is much more complicated than that. I understand it very hard for conservatives to understand that. I understand that it hurts your brains when you're dealing with that. But in reality, that's the way reality is. And you can either try and better yourselves and try and educate yourselves on how things work, or you can keep yourselves with your heads buried in your sand and, ignoring the reality of the world today, and instead trying to hold on to old antiquated concepts that just don't work as you think they do. So right, 50-50 is delusional, says Edgewalker. Bro, the average random fat guy can beat 2 trained female fighters. We got many examples of this. Real life is not a Marvel movie. So if you think that I could take on Ronda Rousey and it's another a woman MMA fighter. Hell, I couldn't even take on Ronda Rousey. Ronda Rousey would kick my ever-loving ass. And I weigh much more than Ronda Rousey. Now, granted, I'm much lighter than I was 3 years ago, because I've lost almost 160 pounds at this point. But still, Ronda Rousey would absolutely kick my fucking ass, and I would never even dream of trying to take on Ronda Rousey. The idea that you think that a fat guy could take on 2 trained fighters who are women? Maybe if I got lucky, but 99 times out of 100, and that's giving to my chances, they're going to beat my ass. And they would beat your ass, and they would beat everybody's ass in the chat. Trust me, bro. See, whatever you do, you got to do it within 30 seconds, because that's when you run out of air. Wait, what? Christine, Boolean logic is all they know. And the sad thing is that in my line of work, i.e. because I'm a software developer, Boolean logic is the only place where it does work is in computers. Yes, you have ones and zeros, on or off, true or false. It works in computers, but and that's a situation where the exception proves the rule. And then once you get to quantum computing, that can actually throw things out the window as well. So, Steve from across the pond, can I take on Liv Morgan or Alexa Bliss? I'll do it all for you. I won't enjoy it not one bit. I guarantee you that if I tried to fight Liv Morgan or Alexa Bliss or anybody who is a wrestler in the WWE or in AEW or any of the other wrestling organizations, most of them would absolutely kick my ass. Might I enjoy it? That's maybe a topic for Liberal Dan Radio After Dark. But, which is fun. Speaking, Steve goes, that's my wrestling knowledge. Speaking of wrestling, let's just bring up one wrestling thing real quick before I want to get to some of these other topics I want to talk about. Because they had the Royal Rumble, which is one of my favorite events. One of my guilty pleasure, so to speak, is hey, Trucker John's in the chat. Good to see you, Trucker John. One of my guilty pleasures is whatchamacallit, watching wrestling. And this past weekend was the Royal Rumble, and the Royal Rumble was in Saudi Arabia. And the Saudi Arabian Royal Rumble has these rules where if you're a guy and you're wrestling in Saudi Arabia, you can wear your tidy little shorts or whatever. You can wear those. You can have all of your body exposed, with basically except your underwear, and it's perfectly okay for the folks, for the royal family, for the crown prince or whatever of Saudi Arabia. That's fine. But if you're a woman wrestling in the kingdom of Saudi Arabia, if you will, you have to be covered from neck to toe. It used to be the first time that they had a wrestling event over in Saudi Arabia, they only had one women's match, and the women actually had to have their heads covered as well. They didn't have to cover their face, but they had to cover their head so you couldn't see their hair. They've since lightened that a little bit, but you still have to be covered from like your neck all the way down. Although your hands don't have to be covered, but your wrists have to be covered, your ankles have to be covered, you have to wear shoes, yada yada. But if you watch and if you look up images of the women's wrestlers from the Women's Royal Rumble over the weekend, there's nothing left to the imagination. Some of these outfits are absolutely just like, and you have these people coming out like, who came out and does some of their dances or whatever. Some of them would do their dance, like Nikki Bella is one of the wrestlers who's an old-time wrestler, Hall of Famer who has come back and continues to wrestle. And her sister was also wrestling in the same type of gear. And it was like completely red, skin tight, nothing was left to the imagination. This is magically okay. But they can't wear their normal outfits because, oh, God forbid, you might see an ankle. So, which is weird. It's like, I'm kind of at like a torn thing when it comes to World Wrestling Entertainment and their dealings with Saudi Arabia, because it seems like as they've gone to Saudi Arabia, that some of their restrictions on what women can do become more and more lenient. Like, again, first you only had one women's match. I think it was between Natalia and Lacey Evans, I think was the first match. And they had to do that. Thank you, Petrazi, for gifting the 10 Liberal Dan memberships as well. Appreciate you for that. But you had to, then they moved on and they've become more and more accepting. You've had women's main event happen in Saudi Arabia. You've had all this stuff. So it seems like perhaps the WWE going into Saudi Arabia and holding events there seems to, expose the Saudi Arabian audience to more, of what women can do and what women can be. And as such, perhaps it's more, it helps them to grow more. You've seen, women cheering, you've seen women, clapping and just seem just happy seeing these women wrestlers performing something you would have never seen maybe 10 years ago, or maybe a little bit more. I forget when the first match was over there, but still, it's still supporting these sort of hypocritical patriarchal standards where dudes can still wrestle in basically what amounts to underwear, but women have to be dressed from neck to ankles in those outfits. So, it's a more complex topic. But again, it's not a binary topic. It's not a good or bad thing. There's levels that exist there, like peeling an onion, to have a Shrek reference, I guess. There's levels that exist there that that basically, have things where you can discuss. And that's why we should have these discussions. Is it good that they're over there? Is it harmful that they're over there? What's the benefits? What's the pros? What's the cons? It's not just, it's bad, it's good, but we should have that conversation. But then again, you also have the situation of, WWE seems to, not promote, allow their wrestlers to be very political when there's things. But again, for example, CM Punk is a wrestler who, when he was wrestling for AEW, walked out in a Texas arena with a abortion rights or women's rights, or basically supporting the right of women to have an abortion right after they passed the draconian anti-abortion law. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. You have Brody King, another huge wrestler who would kick anybody on Ice's ass. Whatever you want to say about wrestling, he's a gigantic MFer, and he has an Abolish Ice shirt, and he was selling those shirts and donating the proceeds of the shirts to help people who might have been improperly detained or whatever. But if you're in WWE, you're less likely to be able to talk about and worth such of things, because seems to be a very strong correlation or relationship between the McMahons or the Helmsleys, I guess at this point, who are running the show, and the Trump administration, which, I guess Triple H, Paul Levesque or whatever, he's in charge. He's one of the presidential fitness whatevers or whatever the title is. So let's see. Daughter loved wrestling when she was little. I took her to see it when we were sitting right spot. She saw them doing high fives at the match. I think this is fake. Well, my cousin, Bill Apter, if you know anything about wrestling, you should recognize the name Bill Apter. If you don't, well, whatever. But Bill Apter is my cousin. There's a video on my nerdydan.com channel on YouTube of us singing the All in the Family theme song with me doing the part of Edith. So he has a book that is basically said, "Is wrestling fixed? I didn't know it was broken." So yes, wrestling may very well be scripted. The outcomes may very well be scripted, but you can't fake a flip. You can't fake. If you do a gigantic somersault off of the ropes, that's not fakeable. There's no wires there. That's athletic ability being done. If you pick a 500-person pound up over your arms and hold them up there over your arms, that's strength. Now, he may help you get up there, but as you're holding them up there and walking around, that's your personal strength. You can't fake that. Again, so I didn't really want to talk about wrestling too much, but for some reason, somebody brought up Alexa Bliss, so I had to do that. Let's see. Let's go back over to what this edgelord is saying over here. Just talking about rules of MMA fighting, I guess. I don't know. Human F Being says, "I always found royalty to be too condescending to tolerate." Yeah, which is one of the reasons I really can't stand, the Americans that are all obsessed with the British royalty and the monarchy. I'm like, didn't we fight a war about that? I don't know. But then again, we fought a war against Nazis too, and now we're embracing Nazi bullshit in this country too. So I guess I shouldn't complain when some people are loving the British monarchy, because I'd rather them be Anglophiles and want to live vicariously through Prince William or whatever than have them be Hitler-philes, right? Petrazi, I could see as an Edith, Dan. Have you heard it? Have you heard us sing it? Because it's basically, my cousin will be like, "Oh, the way Glenn Miller played songs that made the hit parade." That's me, or whatever. So if you want to see my youtube.com/nerdydan.com and see me singing with my cousin Bill, there's at least 2 videos of us singing that song together, once at a family reunion and once when he came down here for WrestleMania, the last time WrestleMania was here. You can go watch me singing that and me going, "And you know who you are there." Yeah, I fucked that one up. I don't have enough moisture in my throat. And I also don't want to be too loud for the people who might be sleeping in the house. So anyway, let's get back to the subject, shall we? Let's get back to the topic at hand. Sorry about that, Dan. I was just having a case of the not gaze despite my YouTube picture. Whatevs. I remember the old censor days, sex scenes, 1 foot stays on the floor, because that made sense. Yeah. Trucker John, I think Ronda Rousey retired. Even if she retired, she would still kick my fucking ass. That's my point. Anyway, so let's watch old Trevor Noah here for a second, because Trevor Noah made a joke on the Grammys.
Almost as much as Trump wants Greenland, which makes sense. I mean, because Epstein's island is gone, he needs a new one to hang out with Bill Clinton. So,
in a post on.
So yeah. Trump threatens to sue Trevor Noah over Epstein jokes at the Grammys. Now, conservatives, I would love to hear your opinions on this. comedy, making jokes, is a First Amendment right. You have the absolute right to make a joke. Parody is a First Amendment right. It falls under satire, right? So, U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened to sue comedian Trevor Noah after he joked about Trump and Epstein Island at the Grammy Isles. Blah, 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 blah. Trump is known to have been associated with Epstein for years, but says he has no knowledge of the crimes and they fell out in 2004, which, of course, I have no reason to believe because Trump's a goddamn liar. Trump responded to Noah's jokes by saying that he would be sending my lawyers to sue. The president of these United States should not be using the power of the federal government, should not be using his authority as president, or should not be, nobody should be able to sue anybody for making what is clearly a joke. It is a joke. But Donald Trump wants to threaten networks and wants to threaten comedians and wants to tell them that they can't make jokes at his expense. Although he can say comments that are actually, harmful against other people's expenses. And he says he doesn't joke. He says clearly that he doesn't joke around. When a reporter asked him if he was just kidding about something, he was like, I don't kid around. So do you conservatives believe that it's okay for a president to threaten to sue somebody for making a joke at his expense? I mean, there were tons of jokes that were made at Joe Biden's expense, and
Had Biden done it, MAGA would flip. Had Biden done it, whole numbers would flip. Had Biden done it, the screen fell play. But Trump did it, so it must be okay.
Yeah, Christine. Elon had said comedy was legal again, but that's only comedy when they're making jokes about the left. He doesn't want people making jokes about him, and Trump clearly doesn't want people making jokes at his expense, even though Donald Trump is probably the biggest joke around. But again, conservatives in the chat. Edgewalker says he should sue him for defamation, take all his money, then revoke his visa and deport him back to South Africa. Was that your joke too? Was that you being funny? Because I'm trying to be serious. But yes, atrocious at every game. I do love the fact when Melania threatened to sue and Hunter Biden was like, absolutely, bring it on, because if you sue me, we get discovery. And once we get discovery, we get to look out all the shit that you don't want us to see, and then your case will fall apart. So I loved when Hunter Biden said that. Loved it. It was great. Brenda Triplett, so Liberal Dan Radio, how do we oust these crooks from our government? Well, if the American people were smart enough and were actually willing to do what was needed to be done, we would need to have a simple majority in the House and enough people in the Senate to convict on articles of impeachment, and then we could kick all these fuckers out. We can impeach the entire goddamn administration. Impeach Vance, impeach Trump, impeach Noam, impeach Homan, impeach Kash Patel, RFK Jr., Dr. Oz. We could impeach the whole lot of them, and then pick whoever we wanted to be Speaker of the House. Then that person would become president until the next election. But the American people are not smart enough to do that. I don't have enough faith in the American people to do that. Why? Because we were stupid enough to elect Donald Trump in 2016, and we were stupid enough to elect Donald Trump again after his failures in his first administration to elect him again, because both times they would have rather seen a racist white dude be president over a woman. So, atrocious at every game. I forgot about Dr. Oz. Believe me, I try to forget about Dr. Oz. I try to forget about all this stuff, but I can't because, it's my job here as host of Liberal Dan Radio, talk from the left, that's right. How disrespectful is it to come to America, make all this money and the peace and security of America, freedom, then turn around and insult the president? How disrespectful is it for you to suggest that he can't? You are basically preaching an anti-American ideal to suggest that somebody can't come to this country and utilize the free speech that makes this one of the great things that makes this country great. And you think that just because the target of the joke is the president, that somehow that should exclude him from being able to... The First Amendment doesn't have an asterisk as it pertains to who gets to be ridiculed and mocked and who doesn't get to be ridiculed and mocked. That was probably one of the most anti-American things that a conservative has said on this show in the history of this show. And this goes back to 2012 when I was only doing on a Blog Talk Radio that's now defunct. The idea that somebody, just because they come from another country, that they can't embrace what makes America great, including our First Amendment rights, that's an absurd comment. Oh, I bet you're going to say, I was just joking. No, defamation is not protected by the First Amendment. You're correct, but that wasn't defamation. That was a joke. Clear comedy is not defamation. Now, Donald Trump is free to try and sue over defamation, but he's not going to be successful because, again, he is a comedian making jokes, and he makes jokes about lots of people, not just Trump. But you're not going to cry if he makes a joke. He included Clinton in that joke as well. Notice you're not complaining about the fact that he included Clinton in the joke. You're just complaining that Trump was also the target of the joke. And jokes, by definition, cannot be defamation because they're humor. Get it? Yeah, comedy is back. Exactly. Comedy is back except, asterisk, comedy is back except for when we don't like it. Comedy is back except when they insult our Fuhrer. Comedy is back except for when, whatever exceptions they want to manufacture to say it's good for us and not for them. It's good for we and not for thee. This week's Hypocrite of the Week, right? I guess we'll find out in court if Trump has the balls to do it. But then I'd love to see Trevor Noah be like, yeah, okay. We get Discovery too, and we're going to get those files that y'all deleted from whatever to say this is why I was making the joke, because of all these files that were briefly up on the White House website and then were taken down because they were too embarrassed to have all these claims about Donald Trump being publicly available, even though we all know, those claims are likely true, right? But again, just like Melania was never going to sue
Truth
Hunter.
Social, Trump wrote, Noah said incorrect.
I hate when I hit the ear button to fix the earpiece and all of a sudden it's there. See, how do we get current officials to do something? You have to elect more of different ones. We have to, instead of electing Chuck Schumer, we need to have like AOC in his place. Instead of having, we need to basically make sure that all of the people who drag their feet on progress need to go. That includes getting rid of, the useless Democrats that are there. And of course, the conservatives in the chat are going to be like, oh, all of the Democrats are useless. But, get rid of the Schumers, get rid of the people who are more than willing to, just be wishy-washy and make compromises with people who don't understand what compromise means. We need to have firm, hard-hitting people. We need more Ilhan Omars, people who, when attacked by somebody at her own little rally last Tuesday, step up and got in the face of the guy who tried to squirt something at her, whatever the hell that something was. We need to be able to basically, have more people who are willing to stand up and fight instead of people who are going to cower, like the 8 who cowered on the whole government shutdown the last time around when they said, oh, well, we're promised that we were going to have a discussion on if we can have a vote or some bullshit. So, Steve, trust me, your president is a joke out with the U.S. We didn't realize you couldn't take it. Oh, we can take it. It's just the MAGAs can't take it because they want to joke about everybody else but cry when everybody makes jokes at their expenses. So, to Edgewalker bro complaining about someone being timed out in a Twitch chat for something they said, then crying about a joke about his orange Jesus. You can't make this shit up. No, you can't. No, that's what the edgelords do, right? Church did every game. I'm indifferent to Schumer, to be honest. He knifed Biden in the back after all, but can we please agree that we shouldn't listen to David fucking Plouffe and his idea of having every Democrat run against Schumer? Jeffries is really, really fucking stupid. A circular firing squad lost us 2024. Again, I'm not looking for a circular firing squad, but in safe districts, we can put people who are in safe, like Senate seats, like Schumer. We can have other younger, more progressive folks run for those offices, and then have those other people get replaced by other newer, younger, progressive voices in those districts, and you're not losing anything. The only problem comes in is when you have people like trying to go up against like Henry Cuellar or whatever in like conservative-leaning districts who are more progressive, who won't win, and as such, you're guaranteeing a Republican win in whatever. But the problem we lost in 2024 was more so of the racists and bigots who wouldn't vote for who wouldn't vote for a black person and or who wouldn't vote for a woman, because of all of the areas where Democrats, again, we've talked about this on Liberal Dan Radio as well. Let me see if I can pull this up in one of my things that I searched up that I have saved. Let's see. Can't seem to find it, but basically the point is I looked at if Vice President Harris had won every state where a Democrat had won statewide, like New Mexico, Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, she would have won. So if everybody who voted for a Democrat statewide also voted for Vice President Harris, we would have President Harris at this point and not President Trump. But racism and bigotry won the day in November of 2024, which is unfortunate. So, okay, it's almost 10 o'clock. Liberal Dan Radio, talk from the left, that's right. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays here at liberaldanradio.com or twitch.liberaldanradio.com. Again, Liberal Dan Radio on most of your social media channels, Twitch, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky. There's a new one. If you go to Liberal Dan Radio on Facebook, I have a link to where there's this new social media out there that claims it doesn't throttle people or shadow ban people or whatever. I haven't really played with it much yet, so I can't really say whether or not it's valid or not, you know, how good it's going to work, but I've added that one too, and I'm Liberal Dan Radio in that one as well. So all the social, if I'm not on a social media channel, if there's a social media platform that I'm not Liberal Dan Radio on, let me know and I'll make one. Simple as that. Threads is another example of one. I don't use that much, but I'm also still Liberal Dan Radio on that one as well. So, wait, hold on. Just straight up deported, honestly, a violation of his human rights. Whose human rights? True Certificate Game. Yeah, the median voter is really fucking stupid. Yeah, unfortunately, that's the case. Edgelord says, we need more radical, corrupt Democrats, preferably foreigners who hate the country and want an open border. Yeah, nothing like, you know, creating all sorts of, you know, lies and straw man arguments to prove your point, right? Because that's what you do. You're basically, nobody wants open borders, or at least the majority of the Democratic Party does not advocate for open borders. We don't want the actual murderers and rapists to come over here, and none of us advocate for people who are here, who are not citizens, to be able to vote in federal elections. But y'all just want to make shit up because, you know, it helps your bigotry. It helps push your bigoted ways. It helps, you know, empower ICE to do its bullshit. So, so are we going to have the Arc de Triomphe? Are we going to have a giant Arc de Triomphe instead of an Arc de Triomphe, like France does? Let's this. Where is he standing in front of this? It looks like almost he's like taking a bird from like some old government that we might not want to follow. But let's hear it. I was going to play the video from the airplane from Air Force One with him dressed up in a tux or whatever, but it's the background noise of the engines makes it very distracting. So let's listen to what Donnie Boy has to say here.
We're building an ark like the Arc de Triomphe, and we're building.
Well, first of all, when he says we're building an ark, I'm surprised he doesn't think we're talking about building a ship. Like, we're building an ark, and we're going to put animals on it 2 by 2, and we're going to put them in the ark, and then we're going to have a boat. It's going to be the biggest boat. It's going to be the best boat. Nobody's going to have a better boat, and then we're going to have it be our new battleship and our new military, and we're going to call it the Trump-class boat or whatever, right? So let's continue about this giant ark that he wants to build.
Building it by the Arlington Bridge, the Arlington Cemetery, opposite the Lincoln Memorial. You could say Jefferson, Washington, everything, because they're all right there. And it's something that is so special. It will be like the one in Paris, but to be honest with you, it blows it away in every way.
It blows it away like I blew Clinton and Epstein's ranch. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Should I be deported now, too, because I made a joke at Trump's expense? Sorry, conservatives.
It's the only city in the world that's of great importance that doesn't have a triumphal arch. You know what that is? and this one is going to blow them all away. The one that
I don't like that the one and say that they have, you know, the arc, you know, in whatever in St. Louis or whatever. I don't think that should be our arc. We should have an arch that, you know, we should have 2 arches. They should be golden, and we should sell hamburgers from those arches, right?
that people know mostly is the Arc de Triomphe in Paris, France. And we're going to top it by, I think, a lot.
We're going to top it, much like I was topped when I was at the Epstein Ranch by some of the other people who were topping me because I was a bottom, right? I'm sorry, that's another joke for the people who don't understand humor. That was a joke. That was not me seriously suggesting that anybody will want to penetrate Trump that way. Anyway, but he was talking, oh, it's going to be big, it's going to be huge. I mean, this is the overcompensation president. This president is all about overcompensating. Like, he clearly has some shortcomings somewhere. I mean, we learned that from Stormy, right? We learned that that he is basically overcompensating for a lot of shortcomings there, and he clearly is overcompensating for a lack of something because everything has to be the biggest. It's the best. No one will have anything bigger. I still don't. I mean, I'm surprised he hasn't tried to get, you know, them to be golden arches, or maybe he's going to try the McDowell's route and have the golden arcs, and have hamburgers with 2 all beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, and onions. But with the McDowell's version, their buns don't have any seeds. My buns don't have seeds either. I much prefer the McDowell's one over the McDonald's hamburgers. Clearly, the better hamburgers belong to McDowell's, and he was wrongly gone after by the McDowell's Corporation. It was unfairly treated, so unfair, because their burgers were so much bigger and so much better, so much more better, so much bigger, bigly. They were bigly better. And so, again, he's overcompensating for giant shortcomings, and because he has to have the biggest, the best, and everything. He can't just be satisfied with whatever it is that we have. Everything has to be bigger and better in reality. But then again, he's going to probably make it and build it in such a shitty way that it's going to topple and kill people, because Donald Trump doesn't care about how things are built on the inside, as long as it's only the outside that counts. He only cares about the external. It's like when he was complaining about how he doesn't want people to break up the roads and fix the problem with the actual structure of the roads, because that will cause too many traffic burdens. He just thinks it's great. We can just put asphalt over it and cover over the problems, because again, he lacks object permanence, because if he can't see a problem, it doesn't exist.
If Trump can't see it, you must not exist. That also includes the Epstein list. Object permanence, a milestone missed. If Trump can't see it, it must not exist.
Yeah, exactly. Along with like no one's ever seen, like you would not believe. It's the biggest, the best. We have the best, like no one's ever seen. Like it's like you could watch Donald Trump talk about anything and make it into a drinking game, as long as you wanted to guarantee yourself to die of alcohol poisoning, because that's what happens. Yeah, bigger, better, faster, cheaper, which is the slogan of I guess who he likes to purchase at Epstein's Island. I don't know. Steve from across the pond, I've just twigged that he eats McDonald's because it has Donald in the name. Does he think he owns it, or he will sue them for using Donald someday? There's another wrestling clip from that. It's like, McMahon and the Donald, you can make McDonald's, or whatever. It's a clip I see every once in a while. I want to see all my random videos or whatever. Jolie, MAGA is obsessed with anyone's genitals, calling libs perverts. That's hilarious. Exactly. Let's see. Is there anything else I wanted to talk about today before we head on and decide to end the show? So we've talked about this. So we've talked about the suing the IRS, suing. Oh, we didn't forget to talk about the Kennedy Center closing. Trump is now, because I guess all these people have now canceled these shows. There are going to be no Black History Month shows. Anybody who would want to have run a Black History program at the Kennedy Center no longer wants to do it because of the stupid rename, because everything has to be made about him. Well, I could only wish that it was the Donald Trump and John F. Kennedy Memorial center, because, you know, what would happen at that point? You know, natural causes, of course. It's all you Trumpians who think that I'm making threats right now. Natural causes. We support natural causes here on Liberal Dan Radio. Talk from Life, that's right. But now his magic idea is to close it for 2 years and then rebuild it to be it'll be the best. It'll be like no one's ever seen. It'll be the best center of the performing arts that anyone's ever seen. And still no one's going to want to perform there because of your bullshit name on it. Because Donald Trump thinks if you just slap a name on something, it makes something great. And we all know that's not the case because, you know, him, his family, etc. Slapping the name Trump on it doesn't make anything at all good. What else? We talked about, maybe we'll talk about this one more on Wednesday. There is the fact that the Democrats did have that major victory for the Texas State Senate in a seat that went 17% towards Donald Trump in the presidential election last in 2024, but now was flipped ridiculously so towards the Democratic candidate. So now a Democrat has flipped that seat in the Texas State Legislature for the Texas State Senate. But the one thing that I do want to talk about today about that, maybe we'll go into more details on Wednesday or Thursday about this particular issue. But Donald Trump was like, maybe the Republican didn't win because I wasn't on the ballot. Newsflash, Donnie boy. You're always on the ballot. If you're the president of these United States with all the bullshit that your administration is doing, you are always on the ballot. Everybody is going to be voting on things pertaining to you because you are going to be on the ballot, because people are going to want to know if the politicians running for the particular office are going to support the bullshit measures that ICE has taken, the bullshit actions of DHS, the bullshit actions of the FBI, the bullshit actions done by Doge, and all the other crap this administration has done. And every single Republican politician is now dealing with the fact that your polling numbers are miserable, that people are rejecting how you've dealt with the economy, that the tariffs are harming people, that people are rejecting how you're dealing with Border Patrol because you promised to go after the worst of the worst, but instead you have not gone after the worst of the worst. You've actually detained and deported people who were here legally. Citizens have been detained. People who were working here with proper work documentation have been detained, deported, and banned. Hell, you have a Republican, James Brown, and his wife, Donna Hughes Brown, who was a legal resident here, but because his wife had some misdemeanor, I think back in 2015 or 2016 or some shit like that, now magically all of a sudden, guess what? His wife is now getting deported. Why? Because, you know, she committed a crime, and now he's like, well, I didn't vote for this. Well, yes, you did, you dumb motherfucker. You voted for somebody who, in the last term, absolutely went after the low-hanging fruit, did not go after the worst of the worst, targeted people who were either here legally or, you know, who might have been the dreamers or whatever, or the parents of the dreamers, yada, yada, yada. People who were not causing anybody any harm, people who's were not a threat to anybody, who were just, you know, washing dishes, working in the fields, yada, 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 to try and, you know, do the jobs that American people don't want to do. And you expected anything different. Albert Einstein defined insanity as doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Magically, these people thought that they would have different results in the second term of Donald Trump, and now they're finding out that their votes are harming their loved ones as well. And here's the difference again between Republicans and Democrats, between the conservatives and the liberals, between the left and the right. The difference here is that when we see something that's going wrong, we do not have to be part of the group that is being wronged in order for us to feel empathy, in order for us to have sympathy for them, in order for us to want to stand up and take action and do something. The conservative right will only take action if it affects them, themselves, and nothing else. Thank you, Fansan, for the follow from a minute ago. Appreciate you. Jolie goes, my kids went to an all-inclusive liberal school with no book banning from K through 12. They grew up to be amazing, kind, inclusive people. Weird how kids raised without hate grew up to be adults that aren't hateful. You know, and there's also things to show that the smarter and the more intelligent you are, the more likely you are to be on the left. That data has been showed as well. But, you know, it would take the conservatives being able to read such a study to be able to understand why that's the case. again, and with the Sasha Riley thing, again, there's a lot of video out there to respond. I don't know. I have it on it's on, somewhere. It's down the road maybe. But again, I don't know how much more of Sasha Riley I can cover that other people haven't covered. So thank you, Justin Freakin, for the follow as well over on Twitch as well. We're almost at 200 followers. If one more person follows me on Twitch, I'll be at 200 followers on Twitch. Thank you for that. We're still not quite yet to the point where we can be partners because we need average 75 views per show in order to make ourselves all the way up to partners. So we're a long way away from that on Twitch. So, but thank you very much, Justin Freakin, for the follow over there. But again, I don't know how much I can improve on the coverage of Sasha Riley, but if I can improve on it, then maybe I will. But I mean, I'm not sure if there is much to improve on it, and also there's a lot of stuff that to be taught. Again, I would basically have to be one long ass show, and I would be responding to somebody else's video who did all the work. So I don't want to be taking credit for somebody else's work. So I'd have to come up with, to me, I would have to come up with something new and intriguing to be able to justify that, whereas I can talk about many other issues. But maybe we can cover it from a 30,000 foot view sometime this week, maybe next week or something like that. But again, whilst I'm still in kind of job limbo, trying to determine whether or not I actually am starting this new job or not that I might have, because my old firm is closing down. Hey, Petrazi, follow me over on Twitch as well, and is now the 200th follower. Shouts out to Petrazi for both gifting 10 memberships over on YouTube, but also hopping on over to Twitch and to make sure that we can get to 200 followers as well. Appreciate you for that as well. Right, said Bob. Billionaires, corporations, and PDF files. Daddy's home. Edgewalker 69. Exactly. Edgelord 69, I should say, right? Thank God they released baby Liam. Now release the rest of the babies, or they are child advocates groups pleading for the release. Have a measles outbreak. This is genocide. And of course, when they when people were talking about children being held or whatever, they would be like, oh, well, Obama separated kids. Did Biden separate kids? But when Trump separates kids, well,
Had Biden done it, MAGA would flip. Had Biden done it, whole numbers would flip. Had Biden done it, that scream foul play. But Trump did it, so it must be okay.
yes, but we all are glad that baby Liam is home as well. And, it's just, again, it shows the deplorable nature of this administration, of how they are dealing with this ICE enforcement. Again, if they were really going after the worst of the worst, then fine. Nobody here on the left would have a problem with going after the murderers of Lake and Riley, with going after the people who, are absolutely people accused of rape and murder and other, even if you had financial crimes that were going on, there were actual legitimate financial crimes. Like, look, if somebody was here who was not a citizen, who was participating in some sort of fraud, like if they actually did participate in daycare fraud, by all means, deport them too. If you're stealing government money, you don't have the right to be here. If you're not a citizen, fine, deport them as well. Fine, but they should all get due process in order to make sure it happened. Again, remember, the Supreme Court ruled 9-0 that every person who is detained for deportation has the right to due process under the law. They should have the ability and be given adequate time to file a writ of habeas corpus. And this administration is ignoring court orders that direct them to do things that they don't want to do, which to me is one of the biggest constitutional crises that we're dealing with right now in this administration. Because if you don't follow this tradition that we have in this country, that we have 3 co-equal branches of government, and when the courts say you can't do this thing, you stop doing it, then guess what? We then lose our government. We don't have the country that we're supposed to have. So anyway, I am going to basically call this the end of today's episode of Liberal Dan Radio, Talk from Left to Right. We will be back here on Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Central. Lather, rinse, repeat, do the same thing, and Thursday night as well, unless for some reason something huge happens tomorrow, which makes me have to have a special show. But I think Hal is actually starting a show later. I think he said his show is later tomorrow, so I probably wouldn't even try and do it and try and compete with Hal. So we'd probably just, if anything big happened on Tuesday, we'd probably still just cover it Wednesday, unless it was live and late breaking and something had to happen. Anyway. But anyway, I just want to thank everybody for watching, even the people on the right who are helping the algorithm, because again, Al Gore needs more rhythm. If you want to support Liberal Dan Radio, again, remember to go subscribe to the YouTube channel. You know, gift memberships, buy your own membership as well. You can comment on videos that are a whole bunch of videos that are out there. Comment, share, etc. Engage with other people. Again, I was at like 70,000 views, up from like 5,000 views from like November, and now we jumped all the way up to almost 90,000, almost 100,000 views of the videos recently, and that's I put that specifically on the viewers of Liberal Dan Radio, Talk from Left, That's Right, for getting out there and commenting on videos that are already out there. That is helping drive the algorithm. That's going to help more people subscribe. It's going to help more people see it, because they're going to see other people commenting, and then that's going to make the algorithm think, oh, well, if more people are commenting, more people are going to want to see this stuff, and more people want to engage. So they're going to push that people in front of other audiences who might also then want to subscribe and follow, and that's how we grow the show and become more successful. So again, I want to thank everybody for watching. Thank everybody for doing whatever it is that you can do to help the show grow. Appreciate y'all. We will again end the show like we normally do, listening to some of the music that we've produced for the channel. And if I don't see you before then, go check out all my other social media channels and have a great one. Peace.
Gather round, everyone, and I'll tell you a tale about an orange-faced buffoon who should be in a jail. When people say he's done something that goes beyond the pale, he will shake his head and give this answer without fail. A hoax, he says it's all a hoax. When at a press conference or with misspelled keystrokes, he says he tells no lies and that he never jokes. Confronting with the truth, he'll say it's all a hoax. A modern Don Quixote, he hates the windmills, claiming to protect the birds and whales he says they kill. But don't believe that story, it's really just a shill. He just did not want to see them wild golfing on Scottish hills. A hoax, he said it's all a hoax. When at a press conference or with misspelled keystrokes, changing a storm path with black marker strokes. Confronted with the truth, he'll say it's all a hoax. Casting mail-in ballots is something that he's done. Now he wants to ban them for each and every one. He claims it's for integrity in each election, but he won't believe the results unless it's him that's won. A hoax, he says it's all a hoax. When at a press conference or with misspelled keystrokes, they'll fool you with distractions like real sugar in Cokes. Confronting with the truth, you'll say it's all a hoax. He promised to release all the Epstein files that caused all the MAGA base to react with smiles. But how long has he put it off? It sure has been a while, and now he's calling this a hoax, protecting pedophiles. A hoax, he says it's all a hoax. When at a press conference or with misspelled keystrokes, he'll keep on gaslighting up until he croaks. Confronted with the truth, he'll say it's all a hoax.
disappears. What they call treason, if chosen name, is patriotism when Donald's to blame. Had Biden done it, I don't flip. Had Biden done it, full numbers would slip. Had Biden done it, they'd shout no way. But Trump did it, so it must be okay. They wrote it in the laws, ink still bleeds. Treating women like soil, just planting seeds. She's gone, brain dead, not even awake. But the state's got a claim, gonna plant its stake. Say it's God's will, say it's life they protect. But they ain't the ones feeling pain or neglect. From Texas to Georgia, they set the trap. Rights rolled back while they smile and clap. Gilead's here, this is true. Hey, MAGA fools, they'll come for you too. So I'm gonna jet, see you later. I'm not gonna be a baby incubator. This ain't pro-life, it's control and shame. They don't care if she's gone, just playing a game. Keep her hooked to machines, cold and still. Just a vessel to them, not a human with will. No consent, no voice, no chance to resist. Just laws in place, written with a clenched fist. Hospitals scared, judges playing God. Bodies ain't temples, just state-owned pods. Gilead's here, this is true. Hey, MAGA fools, they'll come for you too. So I'm gonna jet, see you later. I'm not gonna be a baby incubator. Bands in the dark, they don't care who it kills. Sacking courts while they strip out all of your wills. But we'll fight back, march loud, burn bright. Cause this ain't the end, it's the start of the fight. Gilead's here, ain't no grace. And those leopards are coming to eat your face. So I'm gonna jet, see you later. I'm not gonna be a baby incubator. Not gonna be a baby incubator. Not gonna be a baby incubator.
Obama and Bush's pictures got hidden, obscuring the past, history rewritten. Hung in a hallway where no tour can see, confirm his unending fragility. If Trump can't see it, you must not exist. That also includes the Epstein list. Object permanence, a milestone missed. If Trump can't see it, he must not exist. The testing was the line that he said. Hundreds of thousands needlessly dead. Now HHS is run by brainworm quack, hiding the truth behind his back. If Trump can't see it, it must not exist. That also includes the Epstein list. An administration run by narcissists. If Trump can't see it, it must not exist. Of documents stacked floor to the wall, top secret folders in a bathroom stall. Charges were pressed but the case was dropped. A corrupt judicial system he can co-opt. If Trump can't see it, it must not exist. House includes the Epstein list. He'll swear it's fake news, a liberal twist. If Trump can't see it, it must not exist. Encampments downtown, tents lining the street. Invisible people that power won't need. Hide them away so the cameras can't find it. Proof of a system that's cold and unkind. A payout in secret, an NDA sign, an illegal bribe. Michael Cohen fine. Trump got fined too over his gag order, but she didn't gag, cause he was much shorter. It must not exist. That also includes the Epstein list. We can't let him win, we must resist. If Trump can't see it, it must not exist. The creative director at WGSO had a little something he thought you should know. When Dan picked on his bits, Steve got real gruff. So Steve called Dan a flake, called him liberal dandruff. Steve thinks that his lines are really clever, but when do people ever like him? Never. Liberal Dan's got better lyrics, this is true. Listen and you'll feel like I do. Liberal Dan, his show is great. Liberal Dan, he goes live at 8. Liberal Dan radio, it's the best, cause Liberal Dan's head and shoulders above the rest. Steve's about to find out his mistake. In this feud, Dan's Kendrick, Steve is Drake. Dan might not be the world's best singer, but he's got more talent in his little finger. Steve thinks that his lines are really clever, but when do people ever like him? Never. Liberal Dan's got better lyrics, this is true. Listen and you'll feel like I do. Liberal Dan, his show is great. Liberal Dan, he goes live at 8. Liberal Dan radio, it's the best, cause Liberal Dan's head and shoulders above the rest.